The rain in Seattle does not wash things clean. It only makes them slick. It makes the city shine like a polished stone, cold and impenetrable. It was a Tuesday night in November, the kind of night that seeps into your bones and makes you crave warmth. But inside the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, the air was dry and smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Ethan stood at the podium. The spotlight was hot against his face. It blinded him to the crowd, turning the audience into a sea of faceless shadows. But he could hear them. He could hear the silence of their admiration. He held the heavy crystal award in his hand, the Architect of the Year award. It felt cool and solid. It felt like validation. He leaned into the microphone. His voice was smooth. It was the voice of a man who knows he has won. Architecture is not just about steel and glass, Ethan said. He paused for effect. He knew exactly how long to wait. It is about imposing order on chaos. It is about creating a legacy that stands long after we are gone. I built the Horizon Tower, not to touch the sky, but to anchor the earth. Applause erupted. It was a thunderous sound. Ethan smiled. It was a practiced smile. Humble enough to be charming, arrogant enough to be believed. He looked down at the front row. He squinted against the light. He found her, Sarah. She was sitting at table 1. She wore a navy blue dress that was elegant but understated. She always dressed to blend in, never to stand out. Her hands were clasped in her lap. She was smiling. It was a soft smile, a proud smile, but her eyes were tired. Ethan noticed the fatigue, but he dismissed it. She was just tired. Everyone was tired. He was tired too, but he was up here, shining. He raised the award slightly. I want to thank my team, Ethan said. And, of course, my wife, Sarah, for keeping the home fires burning while I was out building the world. The spotlight swung to her. Sarah nodded graciously to the room. She did not wave. She just nodded. Ethan turned back to the crowd. He had done his duty. He had mentioned her. The obligation was fulfilled. He soaked in the applause for one last moment before stepping down. The rest of the evening was a blur of handshakes and congratulations. Men in expensive suits clapped him on the shoulder. They asked him about his vision. They asked him about his next project. Ethan was in his element. He was charming. He was witty. He felt 10 feet tall. Sarah stood beside him. She held his glass when he needed to sign an autograph. She took the business cards people thrust at him. She was the perfect accessory. Silent, supportive, invisible. At midnight, the valet brought their car around. It was a sleek, silver sedan. Ethan slid into the driver's seat. The leather groaned softly. He loosened his tie and let out a long breath. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a dull buzzing in his ears. Sarah got in the passenger side. She placed the crystal award carefully on her lap, wrapping her shawl around it to protect it. You were wonderful tonight, Ethan, she said softly. Her voice was calm. It was the sound of still water. It went well, Ethan replied. He checked his mirrors. He pulled out into the wet street. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth, rhythmically, hypnotically. They really loved your speech, Sarah added, especially the part about order and chaos. It's a standard speech, Sarah, Ethan said, his tone dismissive. I've given it a dozen times. They love it because it makes them feel smart. Silence filled the car. It wasn't a comfortable silence. It was a heavy thing. It sat between them like a third passenger. Sarah looked out the window at the passing city lights. The rain streaked the GIS, turning the street lamps into long, bleeding ribbons of light. I was thinking, Sarah said, hesitating slightly. Since the project is done, maybe we could go away for a weekend. Just the two of us. To the cabin? Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter. The cabin. The dusty, quiet cabin by the lake. The last thing he wanted was quiet. He wanted noise. He wanted life. He wanted adoration. I can't, he said shortly. The firm is pitching for the museum project next week. I have to be there. You know that. Right, Sarah whispered. The museum. Don't use that tone, Ethan snapped. He didn't look at her. I'm doing this for us. This award? It comes with a bonus, a big one. I'm securing our future, Sarah. You should be happy. I am happy, Ethan, she said. She turned to look at him. In the flashing lights of the street, her face looked pale. I miss you. We live in the same house, but I miss you. Ethan sighed. It was a loud, theatrical sigh. I am right here, Sarah. I am sitting right next to you. Stop being dramatic. It's been a long night. She didn't say anything else. She turned back to the window. She stroked the smooth surface of the award in her lap. She treated it with more tenderness than he had treated her in years. They arrived home. The house was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Concrete and glass, sharp angles, minimalist furniture. It was Ethan's design. It was cold and impressive. It looked like a museum, not a home. They walked inside. The silence of the house was different from the silence in the car. It was vast. Ethan tossed his keys on the marble counter. "I'm going to bed," he said. "I have an early meeting." "Okay," Sarah said. She stood in the hallway, still holding the award. "Do you want some tea or water?" "No," Ethan said. He was already walking up the floating staircase. "Just lights out, Sarah, please." He didn't wait for her answer. He went into the master bedroom. He stripped off his tuxedo and threw it on the chair. He didn't hang it up. Sarah would do it. She always did. He brushed his teeth, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He saw a successful man, a handsome man, a man who deserved everything he had. He climbed into bed. The sheets were high thread count cotton, crisp and cool. He turned his back to the empty side of the bed. He checked his phone. There was a message. It was from a number saved as client Smith. The text read, "You looked like a god on that stage. I wish I could have been the one to take your tie off." Ethan smiled. A real smile this time, a smile that reached his eyes. The fatigue vanished. His heart beat a little faster. He typed back, "Soon." He put the phone face down on the nightstand. A few minutes later, Sarah entered the room. She moved silently. She hung up his tuxedo. She put his shoes away. She changed into her pajamas in the bathroom. When she slipped into bed beside him, she was careful not to touch him. She stayed on her side of the vast mattress. "Good night, Ethan," she whispered into the dark. Ethan pretended to be asleep. He breathed evenly. He waited until her breathing slowed, until he knew she was drifting off. Only then did he allow himself to relax. He didn't feel guilty. He felt entitled. He worked hard. He provided this house, this life. Sarah had everything she needed. Why did she always want more? Why did she want his soul? The next morning was gray. Seattle mornings usually were. Ethan woke up to the smell of coffee. It was a specific smell. Ethiopian blend, freshly ground. He walked down to the kitchen. Sarah was already there. She was wearing a simple gray cardigan and jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was standing by the island, buttering toast. "Coffee is ready," she said without turning around. She pointed to his mug. It was sitting on a coaster at his usual spot. The handle was turned to the right, exactly how he grabbed it. Ethan took a sip. It was perfect. Hot, strong, with just a hint of cinnamon. Just the way he liked it. He didn't acknowledge it. He assumed coffee just happened, like the sunrise. "Did you sleep well?" Sarah asked. She placed a plate of toast and scrambled eggs in front of him. "Fine," Ethan said. He pulled out his phone. He started scrolling through emails. "I have a site visit at 10, then a lunch meeting." "Dinner?" Sarah asked. Her voice had a hint of hope. Ethan paused. He looked at the calendar on his phone. Today was Wednesday. Wednesday was usually late night at the firm. "Probably not," he muttered. "Don't wait up." Sarah stood across from him, holding her own mug. She looked at him over the rim. Her eyes were searching for something. A connection, a spark, anything. "Ethan," she said, "do you know what day tomorrow is?" Ethan stopped scrolling. He frowned. Tomorrow? Thursday. What was Thursday? A deadline? A bill payment? "Thursday," he said. "Why?" Sarah lowered her mug. A shadow passed over her face. It was disappointment, but it was a familiar disappointment, like an old coat she put on every day. "Nothing," she said quietly. "Just Thursday." Ethan went back to his phone. "Okay then." He finished his coffee in 3 large gulps. He left the eggs untouched. He stood up, grabbed his briefcase, and headed for the door. "Have a good day," Sarah called after him. "Yeah," Ethan shouted back. The heavy front door clicked shut. Sarah stood alone in the kitchen. The silence rushed back in. She looked at the uneaten eggs. She looked at the empty coffee mug. She picked it up. She could still feel the warmth of his hand on the ceramic. She held it for a moment, closing her eyes. Then, she walked to the calendar hanging on the wall. A simple paper calendar. She looked at tomorrow's date, November 12th. She had circled it in red ink. Inside the circle, she had written 2 words. 10 years. Ethan drove into the city. The traffic was heavy, but he didn't mind. The sleek isolation of his car was his sanctuary. He played jazz music loudly. He thought about the message from last night. Chloe. Just thinking her name made him feel lighter. Chloe was 24. She was an interior design intern at a firm down the street. She was chaos. She was loud. She was colorful. She didn't care about his legacy or his burdens. She just wanted to have fun. She made him feel like he wasn't 38. She made him feel like he was 25 and dangerous. He parked in his reserved spot in the underground garage. He took the private elevator up to the top floor. His office was a glass box in the sky. It overlooked the Puget Sound. His assistant, a young woman named Jessica, was waiting for him. "Good morning, Mr. Hunt," she said nervously. "Congratulations on the award." "Thank you, Jessica," Ethan said, walking past her without breaking stride. "Get me the file on the Riverfront project. And coffee, black." "But you just had coffee?" Jessica stammered. "I want another one," Ethan said. "From the place on 4th Avenue, the one that burns the beans. I need the bitterness." He slammed his office door. He sat down at his massive oak desk. He felt powerful. He opened the Riverfront file. He looked at the drawings. They were good, technically precise, but something was missing. The client had said they felt clinical. Ethan scowled. What did clients know? They were money men. They didn't understand art. He picked up a pencil. He tried to sketch a new curve for the atrium. His hand felt stiff. The lines were rigid. He erased them. He tried again. Still rigid. He threw the pencil across the room. His phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. "I'm bored. Save me." Ethan smirked. The frustration with the drawing vanished. This was a problem he could solve. "Lunch?" he typed. 12:30. "The French place. I want wines," she replied. Ethan checked his watch. It was only 10 a.m. The hours stretched out before him. He forced himself to work. He yelled at a junior architect for using the wrong font on a presentation. He rejected a budget proposal because the paper quality was too low. He exerted control over every tiny detail of his empire. At 12:15, he left the office. He told Jessica he had a client development meeting. The restaurant was dimly lit and intimate. Chloe was already there. She was wearing a red dress. It was bright. It was aggressive. It clashed with the muted tones of the restaurant, and she didn't care. Ethan slid into the booth opposite her. She beamed at him. "There's the winner," she said. She reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were long and manicured with glittery polish. "Did you bring it? The award?" "I left it at home," Ethan said. "It's heavy." "Boring." Chloe rolled her eyes. "I wanted to take a selfie with it." The waiter poured wine. Chloe drank hers quickly. She talked about her boss, about a party she went to, about a dress she wanted to buy. Ethan listened. He didn't really care about the content of her words. He just liked the energy. He liked that she didn't ask him about his feelings. She didn't ask him to be deep. She just wanted to be looked at. "So," Chloe said, leaning forward. The neckline of her dress dipped. "What are you getting me?" "For what?" Ethan asked, amused. "For existing," she laughed. "And because my birthday is next month, but I accept early gifts." Ethan reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. He had bought it weeks ago, on a whim. Diamond earrings. Not huge, but expensive. Chloe squealed. She opened the box. "Oh my God, Ethan, these are gorgeous!" She put them on immediately, using her phone as a mirror. She turned her head from side to side, admiring the sparkle. "You're the best," she said. She blew him a kiss. Ethan felt a surge of pride. This was easy, transactional, simple. You give a gift, you get a smile. No complex emotional negotiations. No heavy silences. "By the way," Chloe said, looking at her reflection, "are you free tomorrow night? There's a gallery opening. It's going to be wild. Open bar." Ethan froze. "Tomorrow?" "Thursday." Sarah's face popped into his mind. "Do you know what day tomorrow is?" He pulled out his phone again. He opened the calendar app. He looked at November 12th. There was no entry. He hadn't put anything there. He frowned. He searched his memory. November 12th. Why was it significant? It wasn't Sarah's birthday. That was in March. It wasn't the day they met. That was in summer. Then it hit him. The wedding. 10 years ago. A small church on the hill. Rain, of course. Sarah in a white dress that was slightly wet at the hem. She had looked so young, so hopeful. She had cried when she said her vows. He remembered thinking it was sweet. 10 years. A decade. "Ethan?" Chloe waved a hand in front of his face. "Earth to Ethan. Tomorrow night?" Ethan cleared his throat. I can't tomorrow. I have a family obligation." Chloe pouted. Her face transformed instantly from joy to petulance. "Seriously? You always have a family obligation. You said things were basically over." "They are," Ethan lied. "But appearances matter, Chloe. It's a tax thing. A legal thing. I have to be there." "Fine." she huffed. She poured herself more wine. But you owe me. Big time. I know, Ethan said. He felt a flicker of annoyance. Not at Chloe, but at the situation. At the obligation. 10 years. He had to do something. If he ignored it, Sarah would look at him with those charmed, puppy dog eyes for a month. The house would become a tomb of silence. He couldn't deal with the silence. He needed the house to be functional so he could focus on his work. He needed a pacifier. A gift. I have to go, Ethan said abruptly. He threw a credit card on the table. Pay the bill. Keep the rest. You're leaving? Chloe looked shocked. We haven't ordered food. I lost my appetite, Ethan said. He stood up. I'll call you. He walked out of the restaurant into the drizzle. He felt a strange pressure in his chest. Guilt? No, it wasn't guilt. It was stress. Management. He was managing a complex life. He checked the time. 1:30 p.m. He had a window. He needed flowers. Sarah liked flowers. It was a cliché, but clichés worked for a reason. He remembered a place. The Velvet Petal. It was an upscale florist near the market. Sarah used to talk about it. She said they had the freshest blooms. He walked briskly. The city was gray, but the florist shop was an explosion of color. The windows were steamed up from the humidity inside. He pushed the door open. A bell chimed. The air was thick with the scent of lilies, roses, and damp earth. It smelled like a jungle. There was a line. Ethan tapped his foot impatiently. He checked his emails while he waited. Meanwhile, across the city, Sarah was driving. She had spent the morning cleaning a house that was already spotless. She had reorganized the bookshelf. She had folded the towels. She needed to keep her hands busy so her mind wouldn't drift. 10 years. It felt like a lifetime, and yet, it felt like a blink of an eye. She remembered the early days. Ethan wasn't famous then. He was just a hungry architect, with ink stains on his fingers. They used to sit on the floor of their tiny apartment, eating takeout noodles. She would sketch. While he worked on blueprints, they would talk about the future. We're going to build a life, he used to say. A beautiful life. They had built a life, certainly. A big house, a bank account. But the beauty had leaked out somewhere along the way. Sarah stopped at a red light. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She saw the fine lines around her eyes. She saw the resignation. Stop it, she told herself. Today is a new start. 10 years is a milestone. Maybe he's just stressed. Maybe if I make an effort, really make an effort, we can find that spark again. She turned the car towards the market. She wasn't going to wait for him to do something. She would surprise him. She knew he wanted a bonsai tree for his office. He had mentioned it months ago, a specific type. Juniper. Strong, twisted, resilient. She knew the Velvet Petal had them. They had a greenhouse in the back. She parked the car. The rain was picking up. She opened her umbrella. It was a bright yellow umbrella. Ethan hated it. He said it was childish, but Sarah loved it. It was her small rebellion against the gray world. She walked towards the flower shop. Her heart was beating a little faster. She felt like a girl going on a first date. She rehearsed what she would say when she gave him the tree. Here's to the next 10 years. Let's grow together. It sounded cheesy. She smiled to herself. Cheesy was okay. Love was supposed to be a little cheesy. She reached the shop. She closed her umbrella and shook off the water. She stepped inside. The smell of the flowers hit her. It was comforting. She scanned the room. It was busy. There were people everywhere buying bouquets for birthdays, for apologies, for lovers. She didn't see Ethan. The shop was L-shaped, with a large display of orchids blocking the view of the main counter from the entrance. Sarah moved quietly. She headed towards the back, where the potted plants were kept. She wanted to find the perfect bonsai before she approached the counter. She walked down a narrow aisle of ferns. The leaves brushed against her coat. It was peaceful back here. Then, she heard a voice. It was a voice she knew better than her own. It was a voice that used to whisper secrets in her ear. A voice that used to promise her the world. I need something impressive, the voice said. The best you have. Sarah froze. Her hand hovered over a ceramic pot. Ethan. He was here. A surge of warmth flooded her chest. He remembered. He was here to buy her flowers. He hadn't forgotten the anniversary. As all her doubts, all her sadness from the morning, they began to evaporate. He was pretending to forget so he could surprise her. That was so like the old Ethan. She took a step forward, intending to peek around the corner, to see him, to maybe jump out and hug him. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the tone of his voice. It wasn't soft. It wasn't the voice of a husband buying a gift for his wife of 10 years. It was the voice he used when he was ordering a steak. Confident, commanding, a little bit bored. "Certainly, sir," the florist said. A young woman's voice. "What is the occasion?" Sarah held her breath. She waited for him to say, "Anniversary. 10 years." "Just a gift?" Ethan said. "For someone special. Someone special." Sarah smiled. That was her. She was special. "We have these beautiful long-stemmed red roses," the florist suggested. "They just came in from Ecuador. Very passionate." "Perfect," Ethan said immediately. "Passionate is good. How many do you have?" "We can do a dozen. 2 dozen?" "Give me 99. Ethan said. His voice boomed slightly. He wanted everyone in the shop to hear. 99 red roses. The biggest bouquet you can make." Sarah's heart swelled. 99 roses. It was extravagant. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of grand gesture Ethan used to make when they were dating. He was trying to win her back. He was trying to fix things. 99, the florist sounded impressed. "That will be quite heavy, sir." "I can handle it," Ethan said. "Wrap them in black paper. Makes the red pop." Sarah bit her lip. She felt tears pricking her eyes. She had misjudged him. He did care. He really did. "And the card?" the florist asked. "What would you like it to say?" Sarah listened. She imagined the words. "To Sarah, my rock, my love." There was a pause, the scratching of a pen on paper. "Write this," Ethan said. He enunciated clearly. Every syllable was a hammer blow. "To the fire that keeps me warm." Sarah frowned. Fire? He usually called her his anchor, his harbor. Ethan continued. "I can't wait for tomorrow night." Tomorrow night? But tomorrow was the anniversary dinner. Why would he write that on the card now? "And sign it," Ethan said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate, husky. The voice of a lover. "Sign it. Yours, always." "And who is it addressed to?" the florist asked. "Do you want a name on the envelope?" "Yes," Ethan said. He sounded proud. He sounded excited. "Chloe." The name hung in the damp air of the flower shop. Chloe. It wasn't Sarah. Sarah stood among the ferns. The world stopped spinning. The smell of the flowers suddenly became cloying, sickening. It smelled like a funeral parlor. She didn't move. She couldn't move. Her feet were nailed to the floor. She stared at a fern leaf in front of her face. She saw the intricate pattern of the veins. She saw a tiny brown spot on the green tip. Chloe, 99 red roses. For Chloe. "Excellent choice, sir," the florist said. "We will have that ready in 20 minutes. "I'll pick them up tomorrow," Ethan said. "Actually, can you deliver them?" "Tomorrow morning. To the design district. I want her to get them first thing." "Certainly. Address?" Ethan recited an address. He knew it by heart. Sarah felt a coldness spread from her chest to her fingertips. It wasn't a sharp pain. Not yet. It was a numbness. A total, absolute vacuum. 10 years. The breakfasts, the ironed shirts, the silent support at the galas, the waiting, the hoping, the lonely nights, all of it, for this. She watched through the gap in the leaves. She saw Ethan pull out his black credit card. The platinum one, the one linked to their joint account. He tapped it on the machine. Beep. Approved. He looked happy. He looked lighter. He adjusted his coat, checked his reflection in the glass cabinet, and turned to leave. He looked right in her direction, but the wall of orchids hid her. He didn't see her. He never saw her. He walked out of the shop. The bell chimed again. A cheerful, mocking sound. Sarah stood there for a long time. The florist moved on to the next customer. The bustle of the shop continued. Life went on. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling, just a little. She slowly turned around. She didn't buy the bonsai. She walked to the back exit of the shop. She pushed the heavy metal door open and stepped out into the alley. The rain was pouring down now. Hard. Cold. She didn't open her yellow umbrella. She let the rain hit her. She let it soak her hair, her coat, her skin. She walked to her car. She moved like a ghost. She got in, started the engine, and sat there. The wipers swished back and forth. Chloe. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. She was too empty for tears. She put the car in gear. She didn't turn towards home. She turned towards the highway. But then she stopped. No. She wouldn't run. Not yet. She had things to do. She checked the time. Ethan would be back at the office. He would be there until late. He had to work. She had time. She drove home. The house was waiting. The museum. She walked into the kitchen. She saw the calendar, the red circle, 10 years. She took a pen. She crossed it out. A thick black line through the words. Then, she went upstairs. She opened the closet. She pulled out a suitcase. Not a big one, just a carry-on. She began to pack. Sarah moved through the master bedroom like a curator dismantling an exhibit. The silence in the house was absolute, broken only by the soft shush shush of her socks on the hardwood floor. She had stopped crying. The tears had been replaced by a strange, hyper-focused clarity. It was as if the world had suddenly sharpened. The edges of furniture, the weave of the carpet, the dust motes dancing in the gray light of the window. Everything was vividly, painfully real. She opened the suitcase on the bed. It was a small, battered leather case she had owned since college. It predated Ethan. It predated the money, the awards, and the lies. It smelled faintly of old lavender and nostalgia. She didn't pack the silk dresses Ethan had bought her for the galas. She left the cashmere sweaters that he liked because they felt soft under his hands. Instead, she reached into the back of the closet, pushing aside the expensive hangers to find the things that were truly hers. A pair of worn denim jeans with paint splatters on the hem, a thick, knitted cardigan that had unraveled slightly at the cuff, a t-shirt from a concert she had gone to alone, years ago, before she stopped doing things alone. She folded them methodically. Fold, smooth, tuck, fold, smooth, tuck. She moved to the vanity table. The surface was covered in crystal bottles of perfume and jars of expensive cream. Gifts, all gifts. Apology gifts, birthday gifts. I'm sorry I missed dinner gifts. She opened the jewelry box. The diamonds sparkled under the recessed lighting. The tennis bracelet, the emerald necklace, the pearl earrings, they were cold to the touch. She looked at them and felt nothing. They weren't tokens of affection. They were payments. Retainers paid to keep her in her place, to keep her looking the part of the successful architect's wife. She closed the lid of the jewelry box with a soft snap. She didn't take a single piece. Then, she looked at her left hand. The diamond solitaire was huge. It was flawless. Ethan had upgraded it 3 years ago. You deserve the best, he had said. But she had loved the original ring better. A small, imperfect stone he had bought with his first big paycheck. He had traded that one in. He had traded their history for clarity and carrot size. She twisted the ring. It was loose. She had lost weight recently. It slid over her knuckle with ease. She placed it on the velvet surface of the vanity. It looked lonely there, a circle of cold fire. She went downstairs to the studio. This was the only room in the house she felt a connection to, although Ethan rarely entered it. It was where she kept her art supplies. Most of them had dried up or gathered dust. She found her old sketchbook. The spine was broken. She flipped through the pages. Sketches of trees, of strangers on the bus, of a sleeping dog. And then, the sketches of buildings. She stopped at a drawing of the Horizon Tower, Ethan's masterpiece. But this wasn't the final blueprint. This was her sketch. She remembered the night she drew it. Ethan had been stuck, frustrated, throwing crumpled balls of paper at the wall. He couldn't get the entryway right. It felt too imposing. While he slept, she had sat at his desk. She had sketched a curved glass awning, inspired by the shape of a leaf she found in the garden. She had softened the angles. She had left the sketch on his desk. The next morning, he had used it. He never asked where the idea came from. He never said thank you. He just claimed it. I had a breakthrough, he had told his partners. Sarah tore the page out of the sketchbook. She crumpled it in her hand, then stopped. No, she smoothed it out. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. Proof, just for herself. Proof that she existed. She packed her paints. She packed her brushes. She packed the small wooden box where she kept her grandmother's letters. By 4 p.m., she was done. 1 suitcase. That was the sum total of her life after 10 years. She carried the suitcase to the front door. She put on her coat. She picked up her yellow umbrella. She looked back at the house one last time. The towering ceilings, the polished concrete floors, the art on the walls that she didn't choose. It was a beautiful house. It was a masterpiece. But it had no heartbeat. She didn't write a long letter. She didn't pour her heart out on 10 pages of stationery. There was nothing left to say. The 99 roses had said it all. She walked to the dining table. She placed a large manila envelope in the center. It was thick. Inside were the divorce papers. She had consulted a lawyer 6 months ago, during a moment of deep despair, but she had never had the courage to sign them. She had kept them hidden in the pantry, under the table linens. Today, she had signed them. The ink was still fresh. Next to the envelope, she placed the house keys. She turned off the lights. She walked out the door. She locked it from the outside. She dropped the key through the mail slot. It clattered against the metal floor inside, a final metallic period at the end of a long sentence. She got into her car. She didn't look back. She drove into the rain, merging into the traffic, becoming just another pair of red taillights in the city of gray. Ethan didn't leave the office until 8:20 p.m. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour. The city was a blur of neon and water. He felt good, tired, but good. The riverfront project was back on track after he had re-envisioned the atrium. He had yelled at 2 contractors and fired a supplier. He felt in control. He got into his car. The silence of the luxury sedan enveloped him. He turned on the seat warmer. He remembered the date, November 12th. 10 years. He sighed. He had to go home. He had to play the part. He started the engine. As he drove, he rehearsed his lines. "I'm so sorry, honey. The client meeting ran late. You know how it is. I tried to get away." It was a script he had used 100 times. Sarah always bought it, or at least, she pretended to. She would smile that tight, sad smile and heat up his dinner. He needed a prop. The flowers. He cursed. He had forgotten to pick up something on the way. The Velvet Petal was closed by now. He saw a gas station coming up on the right. A brightly lit 24-hour convenience store. He pulled in. The store smelled of stale hot dogs and floor cleaner. Ethan walked to the refrigerated section near the back. The flower selection was pathetic. A few bouquets of carnations dyed unnatural colors. A handful of drooping daisies. He found a bunch of white lilies. They were wrapped in crinkly clear plastic with a generic "For You" sticker. The edges of the petals were starting to turn brown. He checked the price tag. $12.99. "Good enough?" he muttered. Sarah liked lilies. They were elegant, simple. She would appreciate the gesture. It was the thought that counted, right? He paid for the flowers and a pack of gum to cover the scent of the wine he had had at lunch. He drove the rest of the way home feeling virtuous. He was a good husband. He was coming home. He had brought flowers. Most guys, with his status, wouldn't even bother. Most guys would be at a hotel with their mistress right now. But not him. He was going home to his wife. He pulled into the driveway. The house was dark. That was odd. Sarah usually left the porch light on. She knew he hated coming home to a dark house. Power outage? He wondered aloud. He pressed the garage door opener. The heavy door rumbled up. He drove in. Sarah's car was gone. The space next to his was empty. He frowned. Where would she be at 8:30 p.m. on a Thursday? The grocery store? Her mother's? He parked and grabbed his briefcase and the gas station flowers. He walked into the mudroom. "Sarah?" he called out. Silence. The house wasn't just quiet. It was still. There was a difference. Quiet meant no noise. Stillness meant no life. The air felt stagnant, as if no one had breathed it for hours. He walked into the kitchen. Dark. He walked into the living room. Dark. "Sarah!" he yelled, louder this time. A flicker of irritation rose in his chest. Where was she? She knew he was coming home. It was their anniversary, for God's sake. If she was out playing bridge, or whatever she did, it was incredibly selfish. He flipped the light switch. The recessed LEDs flooded the open concept living area with clinical white light. Everything was perfect. The cushions were plumped, the floor was gleaming. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of a break-in. He walked to the dining room, and then he saw it. The table was bare. No tablecloth, no candles, no dinner, just the envelope and the keys. He stopped. He stared at the objects. They looked like foreign artifacts on the dark wood of the table. He walked over slowly. He put the gas station flowers down on the table. The plastic crinkled loudly in the silence. The cheap lilies looked pathetic next to the ominous weight of the manila envelope. He picked up the keys. His keys. The spare set he had given her. He picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. He opened the clasp. He pulled out the documents. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words were printed in bold, black letters. They were standard legal font, Times New Roman, sized dolls, but they screamed. Ethan stared at them. He blinked. He read it again. Dissolution. Is this a joke? He laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. Sarah? He looked around the room, half expecting her to jump out from behind the curtains, yelling, "Surprise!" expecting him to be scared. But no one moved. He flipped through the pages. His eyes scanned the legalese. Irreconcilable differences. Division of assets. Spousal support waived. Waived? He stopped. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for the house. She wasn't asking for a share of his firm. He turned to the last page. There it was. Her signature. Sarah Elizabeth Hunt. Written in her neat, looping handwriting. The same handwriting she used to write grocery lists. The same handwriting she used to write birthday cards. The date next to the signature was today. Ethan dropped the papers back onto the table. They landed with a heavy thud. This was ridiculous. This was drama. She was making a scene. She was trying to get his attention because he had been working too hard. He pulled out his phone. He dialed her number. Ring, ring, ring. The customer you are calling is not available. Please leave a message. He hung up. He dialed again. Ring, ring. Straight to voicemail this time. She had turned her phone off. Damn it, Sarah! He shouted. He threw his phone onto the sofa. It bounced harmlessly against the cushions. He paced the room. He ran his hand through his hair. He was angry now, furious. How dare she? How dare she leave him like this on their anniversary? After everything he did for her, he provided this life. He paid the bills. He was the genius, and she was the support. He walked up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Sarah! He yelled into the empty hallway. He went into the bedroom. He turned on the lights. The bed was made perfectly, too perfectly. He went to the closet. He threw the doors open. Her clothes were there. The dresses. The coats. He grabbed a handful of silk. See? She hadn't left. All her stuff was here. But then he noticed the gaps. The empty hangers where her jeans used to be. The shelf where her sweaters were stacked was bare. He turned to the vanity. The ring. It sat there on the black velvet. It caught the light. It accused him. He walked over and picked it up. He held it up to the light. It was a perfect diamond. He had paid $20,000 for this ring. Ungrateful, he whispered. Unbelievable. He tossed the ring back onto the table. It spun and rattled before settling. He sat down on the edge of the bed. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, creeping confusion. She was gone. Really gone. But why? Because he worked too much? Because he wasn't home enough? It's just a phase, he told the empty room. She'll be back. She has nowhere to go. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have money. She'll be back in 2 days, begging for forgiveness. He stood up. He needed a drink. He went back downstairs to the wet bar in the living room. He poured himself a glass of whiskey. A double. He didn't bother with ice. He took a large swallow. The burn felt good. It grounded him. He walked back to the dining table. He looked at the flowers he had bought. The cheap lilies. They looked even worse now. One of the stems had snapped. The flower head hung limply, like a broken neck. He grabbed the bouquet and threw it into the trash can. Fine, he said. You want to play games? Let's play. He sat down on the sofa. He turned on the TV. He turned the volume up loud. He needed noise. He needed to drown out the silence of the house. He watched the news. He watched a sitcom. He laughed when the laugh track played. But he didn't know what the joke was. Midnight came. The house settled. The refrigerator hummed. The rain tapped against the glass walls. Ethan looked at his phone again. No missed calls. No texts. He opened his messages. He looked at the last text from Sarah, sent 2 days ago. Can you pick up milk on your way home? He hadn't replied. He hadn't picked up the milk. He scrolled up. Good luck with the presentation. I know you'll be great. Dinner is in the oven. Love you. I fixed the button on your gray suit. Scroll. 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 It was a wall of support. A timeline of devotion. And his replies? Okay, late. K, meeting. Ethan felt a strange prickle in his stomach. Not guilt. Not yet. Just discomfort. He locked the phone screen. He lay back on the sofa. He didn't want to go upstairs to the empty bed. The bed was too big for one person. She'll be back, he muttered again, his eyes closing. She needs me. He drifted into a restless sleep, the whiskey heavy in his blood. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a stiff neck and a headache. The TV was still on, playing a morning talk show. Bright colors and loud laughter filled the room. He sat up, disoriented. For a split second, he expected to smell coffee. He expected to hear Sarah in the kitchen, but there was nothing, just the dry, recycled air of the house. Reality crashed back in. He looked at the dining table. The manila envelope was still there. It wasn't a nightmare. Right, Ethan said. He stood up and stretched. His back cracked. Day 1 of the bachelor life. He went into the kitchen. He opened the cupboard to get coffee. The jar was empty. Seriously? He groaned. He had to make do with instant coffee he found in the back of the pantry. It tasted like dirt. He showered, dressed, and got ready for work. He put on his best suit. He wasn't going to let this affect him. He was a professional. He drove to the office. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky a bruised purple. When he walked into the firm, Jessica was waiting. "Good morning, Mr. Hunt," she said. The delivery arrived. "What delivery?" Ethan asked distractedly. "The flowers," Jessica said. She pointed to her desk. There, sitting on the reception counter, was a massive, monstrous bouquet of 99 red roses wrapped in black paper. It was huge. It took up half the desk. Ethan froze. "Why are they here?" he snapped. "The driver said he tried the address you gave, but the recipient wasn't there," Jessica explained. "So he brought them here, since it was the billing address." Chloe wasn't at work? Ethan pulled out his phone. He called Chloe. "Hello?" Her voice was groggy. "Where are you?" Ethan asked. "I sent you flowers. To your office." "I'm not at the office," Chloe said. "I called in sick. I'm hungover. And I'm annoyed at you for bailing yesterday." "I sent you 99 roses, Chloe," Ethan said, looking at the bouquet. It looked vulgar in the daylight. Too red, too much. "They are sitting at my reception desk." "Well, bring them over," Chloe said. "And bring coffee. I need a latte. Skim milk, 2 pumps of vanilla." Ethan looked at the roses. He looked at Jessica, who was staring at him with wide eyes. Jessica knew he was married. She knew these weren't for Sarah. Sarah liked wildflowers. Sarah hated red roses. She said they were a cliché for people who lacked imagination. Ethan felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. "I can't," Ethan said to the phone. "I have meetings." "Whatever," Chloe hung up. Ethan looked at the flowers. "Throw them out," he told Jessica. "Sir?" Jessica gasped. "But they're beautiful and expensive." "I said throw them out," Ethan barked. "Get them out of my sight. The smell is giving me a headache." He stormed into his office. He slammed the door. He sat at his desk. He stared at the view of the Puget Sound. It was gray and vast. He tried to work. He opened the riverfront file. But the lines blurred. He kept thinking about the envelope on the dining table. Spousal support waived. Why? Why didn't she want his money? Everyone wanted his money. Chloe wanted his money. His clients wanted his money. His employees wanted his money. Why didn't Sarah? It bothered him more than her leaving. It felt like an insult. It was as if she was saying his money, the thing he had sacrificed everything for, the thing he had neglected her to earn, was worthless to her. He picked up his phone. He needed to fix this. He needed to win. He didn't lose clients, and he didn't lose wives until he was ready to discard them. He called his private investigator, a man named Reynolds. He had used him before to do background checks on employees. "Reynolds," Ethan said, "I need you to find someone." "Name?" Reynolds asked. His voice was gravelly. "Sarah Hunt, my wife." There was a pause on the line. "Your wife, Mr. Hunt?" "Yes," Ethan said, his jaw tightening. "She took a trip, unexpectedly. I want to make sure she's safe. She left her phone behind." "I see," Reynolds said. He didn't sound convinced, but he didn't ask questions. "I'll need her license plate number, social security, recent photo." "I'll send it over," Ethan said. "I'll get on it. Usually takes about 24 to 48 hours if she's using credit cards." "She is," Ethan said confidently. "She has to be." He hung up. He felt better. He had taken action. He was managing the problem. He leaned back in his chair. He looked at the empty space on his desk, where a picture frame used to sit. He had moved it to a drawer months ago because Chloe had made a comment about his wife staring at them while they were talking. He opened the drawer. He took out the photo. It was from 5 years ago. They were in Italy. Sarah was laughing, holding a gelato. Her hair was windblown. She looked radiant. He looked at himself in the photo. He was looking at his phone. He slammed the drawer shut. "She'll be back," he said again. It was his mantra now. But deep down, a small, cold seed of doubt was beginning to sprout. It was the same feeling he got when he looked at a building foundation and realized the soil was unstable. The feeling that something was structurally unsound, and that the collapse was inevitable. Freedom, Ethan decided, tasted like expensive champagne drunk directly from the bottle. It was Friday night, 48 hours since Sarah had walked out. 48 hours of silence that he had decided to interpret not as abandonment, but as liberation. He stood in the center of his living room, the lights dimmed to a seductive low glow. The sound system was playing electronic music, a heavy thumping bass that vibrated against the glass walls. It was a sound Sarah never would have allowed. She liked jazz, she liked quiet. Tonight, there was no quiet. The front door opened. Chloe walked in. She didn't walk, she strutted. She was wearing a silver dress that was little more than a shimmering suggestion of fabric. She carried a bottle of Dom Perignon in one hand and her high heels in the other. "Wow," she said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. She spun around, taking it all in. "So, this is the fortress. Welcome home," Ethan said. He felt a surge of adrenaline. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? Youth, energy, no judgment. Chloe ran her hand along the back of the Italian leather sofa. "It's huge. And so gray. Don't you like color? Gray is sophisticated," Ethan said, pouring 2 glasses of wine he had already opened. "Color is a crutch for bad design." "Boring," Chloe declared. She dropped her purse on the dining table, right on the spot where the divorce papers had been sitting just hours ago. Ethan had shoved the papers into a drawer. He hadn't signed them. He hadn't even looked at them again. They were a problem for future Ethan. Present Ethan was busy being reborn. He handed her a glass. She took it and downed half of it in one gulp. "So," she said, stepping close to him. She smelled of vanilla and hairspray. It was a sweet, artificial scent. Sarah always smelled of rosemary soap and rain. "Where is she? The wife? Is she hiding in a closet?" "She's gone," Ethan said. He clinked his glass against hers. "Indefinite sabbatical. It's just us." Chloe squealed. It was a sharp, piercing sound. "Finally! I told you she would give up eventually. Nobody wants to be where they aren't wanted." She wandered over to the wet bar. She started touching things. She picked up a crystal decanter. She opened the humidor. She left fingerprints on the polished surfaces. Ethan watched her. He felt a twitch of annoyance. Sarah never touched things without a purpose. Sarah moved like water. Chloe moved like a tornado. "Relax," he told himself. "This is fun. This is life." "Put some music on," Chloe yelled. "Louder, let's dance." She turned the volume knob all the way up. The bass shook the floorboards. She started dancing in the middle of the room, spinning, laughing, spilling a little bit of wine on the expensive Persian rug. Ethan saw the drop of red wine hit the beige wool. It bloomed like a tiny wound. He flinched. Sarah would have been on her knees instantly with club soda and a cloth. Sarah would have saved the rug. Chloe didn't even notice. She pulled him into the center of the room. She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Kiss me," she commanded. He kissed her. Her lips were sticky with lip gloss. Her tongue was aggressive. It was passionate, yes, but it felt performative, like they were acting in a movie scene about an affair. They stumbled up the stairs. Chloe giggled the whole way. She kicked one of the wall sconces with her bare foot, leaving a smudge. In the bedroom, she jumped onto the bed. The bed Sarah had made perfectly before she left. Chloe messed up the sheets in seconds. "Come on, architect," she teased. "Show me your structure," Ethan laughed. He joined her. He buried himself in the sensation of her skin, the noise of her laughter, the sheer overwhelming presence of her. He tried to drown out the quiet voice in his head that noted the wine stain downstairs. He tried to forget that this was the bed where he had slept with his wife for 10 years. For tonight, he succeeded. Saturday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Ethan woke up. The light was streaming in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He groaned and covered his eyes. He had forgotten to close the blackout blinds. Sarah always closed the blinds. He reached out an arm. He hit warm skin. Chloe was sprawled across the bed. She was snoring. Not a soft, rhythmic breathing, but a legitimate, open-mouthed snore. Her makeup was smeared across the white pillowcase. Mascara tracks and lipstick stains. Ethan sat up. His head was pounding. His mouth tasted like stale wine. He needed coffee, desperately. He slid out of bed, careful not to wake her. He needed a moment of peace. He went downstairs. The living room was a disaster zone. The bottle of champagne was empty on the floor. 2 broken wine glasses sat on the coffee table. On the rug, yes, the stain was still there, dried now, permanent. He walked into the kitchen. The silence of the kitchen was accusing. He opened the coffee cabinet. Still empty. He had forgotten to buy beans. Damn it, he hissed. He searched the drawers. He found a box of herbal tea Sarah used to drink when she had a cold. Chamomile and honey. Better than nothing, he muttered. He put the kettle on. He stood by the counter, waiting for the water to boil. He looked out into the backyard. The garden was gray and wet. The hydrangeas were dying. Sarah usually pruned them by now. Ethan? He turned around. Chloe was standing in the doorway. She was wearing one of his dress shirts. It was unbuttoned low. On a movie screen, it would have looked sexy. In the harsh light of a hangover morning, she just looked disheveled. Hey, he said. Coffee situation is grim. We have tea. Tea? Chloe made a face. I don't do tea. Tea is for sick people. Can we go out? I want brunch. I want eggs Benedict and a mimosa. I have a headache, Ethan said. And the paparazzi hang out at the brunch spots on weekends. I'm not ready to be seen yet, not until the legal stuff is clearer. Chloe pouted. She walked over and hopped up onto the marble island. Her bare legs dangled. You're no fun in the morning, she complained. Fine, make me something here. Pancakes? Do you have bacon? Ethan looked at the fridge. I don't know. He opened it. It was barren. A carton of milk that expired 2 days ago. A jar of mustard. A bottle of sparkling water. Sarah had stopped shopping days before she left. We have mustard, Ethan said dryly. Chloe laughed. You're rich, Ethan. How is your fridge empty? Because... Ethan stopped. Because Sarah handled it. Sarah made sure the fridge was full, the coffee was ground, and the life was sustained. He didn't even know where the grocery store was in this neighborhood. I'll order delivery, Ethan said, grabbing his phone. What do you want? Everything, Chloe said. I'm starving. They spent the weekend in the house. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway. It ended up feeling like a siege. Chloe got bored easily. By Saturday afternoon, she was complaining about the Wi-Fi speed. By Saturday evening, she was complaining that the house was too quiet and creepy. She watched reality TV shows at full volume in the living room. Ethan tried to work in his study, but the sound of bickering housewives from the TV bled through the walls. He came out to get water. Can you turn that down? He asked. Why? Chloe asked, not looking away from the screen. You're just sketching. It's not like you're doing brain surgery. Ethan bristled. I'm designing a museum, Chloe. It requires concentration. You're always working, she sighed. She looked around the room. This place needs a vibe check. It's so stiff. We should paint a wall, maybe a bright teal, or hang some neon art. Ethan looked at his pristine architectural concrete walls. The idea of teal paint made him physically ill. No, he said sharply. The walls stay gray. Control freak, she muttered. By Sunday night, the house was a wreck. Takeout boxes were piled on the counter. The sink was full of dirty dishes. Because Chloe didn't know how to load the dishwasher. I didn't want to break a nail, she had said. Towels were on the bathroom floor. Ethan walked around, picking things up. He felt like a maid. I'm going home, Chloe announced suddenly around 8 o'clock p.m. She was standing by the door, dressed in her silver dress from Friday. What? Now? Ethan asked. He was holding a garbage bag. Yeah. I need to get ready for work tomorrow. And honestly, this place is kind of depressing. It's like living in a bank vault. She kissed him on the cheek. Call me later. And buy groceries. She left. Ethan locked the door behind her. He leaned his forehead against the cool wood. Silence returned. But it wasn't the peaceful silence of Sarah. It was the exhausted silence of a battlefield after the fighting has stopped. He walked into the kitchen. He looked at the pile of greasy pizza boxes. He missed the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary. He missed the way Sarah would hum while she dried the dishes. He missed the order. It's just the adjustment period, he told himself. He tied the garbage bag with a vicious knot. I just need to hire a housekeeper. Monday morning, the real world. Ethan arrived at the office early. He was wearing a new suit, but he felt frayed. He hadn't slept well. The bed felt too big again after Chloe left. Jessica was at her desk. The massive bouquet of red roses was gone. Good morning, Mr. Hunt, she said. She looked at him with a strange expression. Pity? Curiosity? Morning, Ethan grunted. Coffee. And this time, get it right. He went into his office. He sat down. He needed a win. His phone rang. It was Reynolds, the private investigator. Hunt, Ethan answered immediately. Tell me you found her. I have information, Reynolds said. His voice was slow, deliberate. But you're not going to like it. Where is she? Ethan demanded. Is she at her mother's? A hotel? She's not using the credit cards, Mr. Hunt, Reynolds said. What? Ethan frowned. Impossible. She has no income. She hasn't worked in 10 years. I ran a trace on all the joint accounts and her personal cards. There was one transaction on Thursday morning, before she left. She withdrew 50% of the joint savings account. It was a legal withdrawal. Since her name is on the account, the bank authorized it. Ethan did the math in his head. 50%. It was a significant amount, but not a fortune. It was enough to survive for a year, maybe 2 if she was careful. Okay, Ethan said. So she has cash. Where did she go? That's the problem, Reynolds said. She transferred the funds to a cashier's check. And then, nothing. No digital footprint, no hotel check-ins under her name, no flight manifest, no rental car agreement. She has a car, Ethan said. Her Prius. I ran the plates, Reynolds said. The car was sold on Thursday afternoon to a used car dealership in Tacoma. She sold it for cash, way below market value. She wanted to get rid of it fast. Ethan felt a cold chill. Selling the car? That meant she didn't want to be tracked. So she's on foot? Ethan asked. Or she bought a burner car with cash? Or she took a bus? Or a train? Without a credit card trail, Mr. Hunt, she's a ghost. She went analog. Ethan leaned back in his chair. He stared at the ceiling. Sarah. Quiet, compliant Sarah. The woman who asked him for help to reset the router. The woman who got anxious if she didn't have a GPS. She had gone off the grid? It didn't make sense. It was too competent, too calculated. Keep looking, Ethan said. She can't disappear. She's not a spy. She's a housewife. I'll check the bus terminals and train stations, Reynolds said. But without a destination, it's a needle in a haystack. Do you have any idea where she might go? Family? Old friends? Ethan thought. Family. Her parents were dead. She was an only child. Friends? She used to have friends from art school, but she had drifted away from them over the years. Her life had revolved around his friends, his colleagues. No, Ethan realized. I don't know. We'll keep digging, Reynolds said. But Mr. Hunt, usually when a spouse disappears this thoroughly, they planned it for a long time. Ethan hung up. Planned it? He looked at the calendar, the date of the anniversary. Had she been planning this? While she ironed his shirts? While she cooked his dinner? While she smiled at him across the breakfast table? The thought was terrifying. It meant he didn't know the person he had lived with for a decade. The week dragged on. Ethan threw himself into the museum pitch. This was the big one, the Seattle Modern Art Museum. If he won this, he would be a legend. He called a team meeting on Wednesday. He gathered his top architects in the conference room. He pinned his sketches to the board. This is the concept, Ethan said, tapping the drawing. The void, a massive open atrium that forces the viewer to confront the emptiness of space. The team nodded. They were yes men. They were paid to nod. But there was one junior architect, a young guy named Marcus. He frowned. What? Ethan snapped. Speak up, Marcus. It's just... Marcus hesitated. It feels a bit... cold. I mean, it's impressive, sir. Very imposing. But where's the humanity? Where do people gather? It feels like a tomb. Ethan felt his face flush. Clinical. That was what the client had said about the riverfront project. It's not a tomb, Ethan growled. It's minimalism. It's pure. Maybe if we added some organic curves, Marcus suggested, like the ones you did on the Horizon Tower. That entryway was genius. It felt like a hug. Ethan froze. The Horizon Tower entryway, Sarah's sketch, the leaf. He looked at his own drawing. Sharp angles, hard lines, aggressive geometry. It was technically perfect. But Marcus was right. It had no soul. I don't repeat myself, Ethan lied. The Horizon Tower is the past. This is the future. He dismissed the meeting early. He went back to his office and shut the door. He sat at his drafting table. He picked up a charcoal stick. Draw a curve, he told himself. Make it soft. Make it welcoming. He put the charcoal to the paper. He tried to sweep his hand in a gentle arc, but his wrist was stiff. The line came out jagged, forced. He tried again, and again. He ripped the paper off the pad and crumpled it up. Why couldn't he do it? He was the genius. He was the award winner. He closed his eyes. He tried to picture the curve Sarah had drawn. He tried to remember how her hand had moved. He couldn't see it. He had never watched her draw. He had only seen the result. He looked at the empty space on his desk. He picked up his phone. He opened the text thread with Sarah. Where are you? He typed. He stared at the blinking cursor. He didn't send it. He deleted it. He typed another one. How do you draw the leaf? He deleted that too. He felt a sudden crushing weight of incompetence. He realized with horror that he might not be the architect he thought he was. He might be half an architect, and the other half was currently missing. Location unknown. Thursday night, 1 week since she left. Ethan came home late. He didn't want to be in the house, but he had nowhere else to go. Chloe was busy. She was mad that he hadn't bought her a purse she wanted. The house smelled musty. The garbage from the weekend was still in the bin, starting to smell. Ethan walked into the studio, Sarah's room. He turned on the light. It was the only room in the house that felt warm. There was a rug with a floral pattern. There were dried flowers in a jar. He walked to her easel. It was empty. He looked at the shelves. He saw a row of sketchbooks, old ones. He pulled one down. It was dated 5 years ago. He opened it. The pages were filled with him. Sketches of him sleeping. Sketches of him drinking coffee. Sketches of him looking out the window, brooding. In every sketch, he looked softer than he felt. He looked kind. He looked vulnerable. She had drawn him not as he was, but as she saw him, or as she wanted him to be. He turned the page. There was a drawing of a house. Not their house. A small cottage. It had a porch. It had a garden overflowing with messy, wild flowers. There was a cat on the railing. Underneath the drawing, she had written, "Someday." Ethan stared at the cottage. It was poorly designed, architecturally speaking. The roof pitch was inefficient. The windows were too small, but it looked happy. He slammed the book shut. "It's a fantasy," he said aloud. "It's a childish fantasy." He put the book back on the shelf, but his hand knocked over a small ceramic pot. It fell to the floor and shattered. It wasn't empty. Inside the shards, hidden at the bottom of the pot, was a small, velvet pouch. Ethan crouched down. He picked it up. He opened it. Inside was a positive pregnancy test. Ethan stopped breathing. He looked at the date written on the plastic stick in Sharpie. 3 years ago. 3 years ago? He tried to remember 3 years ago. What was happening? He was in Dubai, overseeing the construction of the Sandstone Hotel. He was gone for 3 months. When he came back, Sarah had been quiet, thinner. She had spent a lot of time in bed. He had assumed she had the flu. He had told her to take vitamins. He held the stick. She had been pregnant, and she had lost it. Or, he didn't know. He didn't know anything. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a wife. He had been living with a stranger who carried griefs he never bothered to ask about. He put the test back in the pouch. He put the pouch in his pocket. His phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "I'm outside. Let me in. I'm bored." Ethan looked at the phone. He looked at the shattered pot on the floor. He felt a wave of nausea. He didn't want to see Chloe. He didn't want the noise. He didn't want the silver dress. But he couldn't be alone with the silence. The silence was starting to scream at him. He walked to the front door. He unlocked it. Chloe stood there, grinning, holding a takeout bag. "Thai food," she announced. "And I brought tequila." Ethan looked at her. He forced a smile. It felt like a mask made of clay, cracking at the edges. "Great," he said. "Come in." He let the chaos back in, because the truth was too quiet to bear. The conference room at the Seattle Modern Art Museum board was designed to intimidate. It was a long, rectangular space with walls of brushed steel and a single, panoramic window overlooking the gray waters of the bay. Ethan stood at the head of the table. He was sweating. It wasn't a nervous sweat. Ethan Hunt didn't get nervous. It was a cold, sickly sheen that clung to his forehead. He had woken up feeling heavy, his limbs filled with lead, but he had ignored it. This was the pitch, the defining moment. Seated across from him were 5 board members. In the center sat Julian Sterling, the museum's director. Sterling was a man of few words and even fewer smiles. He wore circular glasses that magnified his skeptical eyes. "The concept," Ethan said, his voice rasping slightly, "is the void." He clicked the remote. The projector screen behind him lit up with a high-definition rendering. It was a massive structure of black concrete and glass. Sharp, jagged lines cut into the sky. The entrance was a narrow slit, forcing visitors to squeeze through into a cavernous, empty atrium. "Art is about confrontation," Ethan explained, moving his hands in practiced gestures. "We strip away the comfort. We force the viewer to stand alone in the space. The architecture doesn't hold your hand. It challenges you." He looked at the faces of the board members. He expected awe. He expected them to nod and whisper about his boldness. Instead, there was silence. A long, uncomfortable silence that stretched until the hum of the projector fan sounded like a jet engine. Sterling took off his glasses. He polished them slowly with a silk cloth. It's aggressive, Sterling said finally. It's bold, Ethan corrected him. It's hostile, Mr. Hunt, Sterling said. He put his glasses back on. This is a museum, a place for community, a place for families, for students, for lovers. This building, he gestured at the screen. It looks like a fortress. It looks like a place where you go to be judged, not inspired. Ethan felt a flash of anger. Great art disturbs. He quoted a line he had read in a magazine. We aren't building a monument to your ego, Ethan, Sterling said quietly. The use of his first name was a warning. We are building a public space. Look at the light. It's dark. It's cold. Where is the warmth? Where is the humanity? Where is the humanity? The question hung in the air. Ethan stared at the rendering. Suddenly, he didn't see a masterpiece. He saw his own house. He saw the cold concrete walls. He saw the empty rooms. He saw a structure designed for admiration, not for living. I can adjust the lighting, Ethan stammered. I can add skylights. It's not about skylights, Sterling said, standing up. It's about the soul of the design. Something is missing, Ethan. Your previous work, the Horizon Tower, the library, they had this grace. A balance between strength and softness. This? He shook his head. This is just hard. Sterling looked at his watch. We have 2 other firms presenting next week. I'll give you 1 chance to revise this. Bring me something that beats, Ethan. Something that breathes. Or we go with the other firm. The meeting ended. The board members filed out. Ethan was left alone with his black concrete fortress on the screen. He packed up his laptop. His hands were shaking. He walked out of the building. It was raining again. The cold water hit his face, mixing with the sweat. He felt dizzy. The world tilted slightly to the left. He got into his car. He sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. He had failed. For the first time in 10 years, he had walked into a room and failed. And he knew why. The grace. He didn't have the grace. Sarah had the grace. He drove home. The traffic was a nightmare. Red taillights blurred into long, angry streaks. When he opened the front door, the bass hit him. Thump, thump, thump. Electronic dance music, loud, distorted. Ethan walked into the living room. It was a scene of devastation. Chloe had friends over, 3 of them, strangers. They were draped over his furniture like discarded clothes. A guy with a nose ring was ashing a cigarette into a decorative bowl, a bowl Sarah had brought back from a trip to Japan. Chloe was dancing on the coffee table. She was wearing her shoes. Her heels were digging into the wood. Chloe! Ethan roared. The music didn't stop. Chloe looked down at him and giggled. She was drunk. Hey! The architect is home, she shouted. Guys, this is Ethan. He builds things. Turn it off, Ethan yelled. Chill out, the guy with the nose ring said. Have a drink. Ethan walked over to the sound system. He yanked the cord out of the wall. The music died instantly, leaving a ringing silence. Get out, Ethan said. His voice was low, trembling with a rage he hadn't felt in years. Ethan, don't be a buzzkill, Chloe said, climbing down from the table. She stumbled slightly. We're just having a pregame. I said get out, Ethan screamed. He pointed at the door. All of you, now! The strangers exchanged looks. They grabbed their coats and shuffled out, muttering about him being a psycho. Chloe stood there. Her hands were on her hips. Her face was flushed with anger. You embarrassed me, she hissed. You're destroying my house, Ethan countered. He walked over to the Japanese bowl. He looked at the ash. Do you know what this is? This is raku pottery. It's irreplaceable. It's a bowl, Ethan, Chloe shouted. It's a stupid, ugly gray bowl. Everything in this house is gray. You're gray. You're boring. She picked up a cushion and threw it at him. It bounced harmlessly off his chest. I tried to make this place fun, she yelled. I tried to bring some life into this mausoleum. But you're obsessed with your legacy. You're obsessed with being perfect. At least I have a legacy, Ethan snapped. What do you have, Chloe? An Instagram account and a liver problem? Chloe's mouth dropped open. Her eyes narrowed into slits. Wow, she said softly. You really are a prick. She walked closer to him, and she poked him in the chest with a sharp fingernail. You think you're so special, but you know what? You're empty. That's why she left you, Sarah. She didn't leave because of me. She left because she was tired of being the only real thing in a fake world. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "Don't say her name," he whispered. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah!" Chloe taunted. "She's all you think about. You call out her name in your sleep, you know that? It's pathetic." Ethan grabbed Chloe's arm, not hard, but firm. "Leave," he said. "Pack your things. I want you gone in 10 minutes. "I'm going," Chloe spat. She yanked her arm away. "I'm done with this. I'm done with you. You're old, Ethan. And you're sad." She ran upstairs. Ethan heard drawers being ripped open. He heard the sound of things being thrown into bags. 10 minutes later, she came down. She dragged her suitcase across the floor, leaving a scratch. She opened the door. The rain swirled in. "Have a nice life," she said. "I hope you and your buildings are very happy together." She slammed the door. Ethan was alone. Again. But this time, the silence wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It pressed down on his chest. He coughed. A dry, hacking cough. His throat felt like it was filled with glass. He stumbled to the sofa and collapsed. The adrenaline of the fight drained away, leaving him shaking. He was sick, really sick. He curled up into a ball. He closed his eyes. "Sarah," he whispered, but only the house answered, with the creaking of settling steel and the drumming of the rain. The fever took him in the night. It wasn't a normal flu. It was a purge. His body, weakened by stress, alcohol, and lack of food, simply gave up. He lay on the sofa for 2 days. He drifted in and out of consciousness. In his delirium, the house changed. The walls seemed to stretch and warp. The ceiling moved further away, like the sky. He saw Sarah. She was standing in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. The rhythmic chop, chop, chop echoed in his head. He tried to call out to her. "Water," he croaked. She turned around, but she didn't have a face. It was just a blank, smooth surface. "You wanted order," the faceless Sarah said. Her voice sounded like it was coming from a machine. "This is order. No mess, no emotion." Ethan woke up screaming. He was soaked in sweat. He was shivering so hard his teeth chattered. He managed to crawl to the kitchen. He drank water directly from the tap, splashing it over his face and shirt. He looked at the digital clock on the oven. Sunday, 3 Hontok a.m. He had missed 2 days of work. His phone, which was lying on the floor somewhere, was probably dead. He needed to get up. He needed to work. The deadline, Sterling, the museum. He dragged himself upright. He leaned against the counter, panting. He had to fix the design. He had to find the grace. He stumbled into his home studio. He turned on the light. The brightness hurt his eyes. He sat at the drafting table. He found his charcoal. "Make it soft," he commanded his hand. He drew a line. It was jagged. He threw the charcoal down. "Think," he muttered. How did she do it? How did she fix the tower? He looked at the shelf where he had found the pregnancy test, the old sketchbooks. He pulled them all down. He dumped them on the floor. He sat amidst the pile of books, shivering in his sweat-stained suit. He opened them one by one. Sketchbook 2018, Sketchbook 2019, Sketchbook 2020. He turned the pages frantically. He saw sketches of flowers, of birds, of landscapes. And then he saw it, a loose piece of tracing paper tucked into the back of the 2019 book. It was a drawing of the Viridian Library, one of his most acclaimed projects. The critics had praised the inspired use of natural light in the reading room. Ethan looked at the tracing paper. It was a sketch of the reading room, but in the margins, in Sarah's handwriting, were notes. Too dark. Children need to see the sky. Rotate the roof 15 degrees east. The stairs are too steep. Make them invite, not exhaust. Ethan stared. He remembered that project. He had been stuck on the roof alignment for weeks. He had come down to breakfast one morning and the solution had just popped into his head. Or so he thought. Had she left the sketch out? Had she planted the idea? He grabbed another book. 2021. The Onyx Concert Hall. Another loose sheet. Acoustics will bounce too hard off this wall. Add texture. Use wood, not stone. Warmth. He remembered the argument with the acoustic engineer. He had insisted on wood. He thought it was his intuition. It wasn't intuition. It was Sarah. He went through every book. The Riverside Bridge. The City Hall Annex. The Horizon Tower. Every single major success of his career. Every breakthrough. Every moment of genius. She was there. In the margins. In the rough sketches. In the gentle corrections she must have left on his desk while he slept. Or slipped into his briefcase. Or mentioned casually over dinner until he thought it was his own idea. She hadn't just been his wife. She hadn't just been his support system. She was the ghost architect. She was the soul he was missing. Ethan dropped the book. He put his hands over his face. He laughed. It was a broken, wheezing sound. "I'm a fraud," he whispered. He wasn't the architect of the year. He was just a draftsman with a talented wife he had treated like a servant. He had won awards for her vision. He had stood on stages and taken bows for her grace. And he had cheated on her with a girl who thought gray was boring. The realization hit him harder than the fever. It was a physical blow to the gut. The shame was absolute. He lay back on the rug, surrounded by the evidence of his own mediocrity. He closed his eyes. He wanted to disappear. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. But then, his hand brushed against something else in the pile. It wasn't a sketchbook. It was a folder. A blue, plastic folder. He opened it. Inside were receipts. Old receipts. Ethan frowned. Why would she keep receipts in a sketchbook? He picked one up. It was a receipt for property tax. Date, November 2023. Amount, $1,200. He looked at the property address. 14 Lighthouse Road, Port Haven, Maine. Ethan blinked. Maine? He looked at the next document. A deed of sale. Buyer, Sarah Elizabeth Hunt. Date, August 2015. 10 years ago, just after they got married. She had bought a house he didn't know about. He read the details. It was a small property, a cottage. Fixer-upper. He looked at the bottom of the folder. There was a photo. It was a Polaroid, faded. It showed a small, white house on a cliff overlooking a gray ocean. The paint was peeling. The roof looked saggy, but there was a garden. And in the garden, standing with her back to the camera, looking out at the sea, was Sarah. She was wearing a thick sweater. Her hair was loose. She looked free. Ethan stared at the photo. Port Haven, Maine. She had a bolt hole. She had an escape plan. Or maybe it wasn't an escape plan. Maybe it was her dream. The dream she couldn't share with him because he was too busy building glass fortresses. He looked at the date on the deed again. August 2015. That was the year he started the firm. The year he told her they couldn't afford a vacation because every penny had to go into the business. She had bought this with her own money, her inheritance from her grandmother. He sat up. The dizziness was still there, but it was pushed back by a new sensation, purpose. He knew where she was. He looked at the clock. Sunday, 5 a.m. He stood up. He swayed, grabbing the desk for support. He couldn't go like this. He was sick. He was a mess. But he had to go. He stumbled to the bathroom. He looked at himself in the mirror. He looked like a ghost. Pale skin, dark circles under his eyes. 3 days of stubble. He turned on the shower. He stood under the scalding water until his shivering stopped. He shaved. His hand shook, and he nicked his chin. A drop of bright red blood bloomed on his skin. He dressed. Not a suit. He put on jeans, a sweater, a heavy coat. He packed a bag. He threw in his laptop, his medication, and the folder with the deed. He walked downstairs. He looked at the house, the gray, empty house. He walked to the dining table. He picked up the divorce papers. He looked at them for a long moment. Then, he put them in his bag. He didn't know what he was going to do when he got there. Was he going to beg? Was he going to demand she come back to save his career? He didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't draw the curve without her. He walked out to the garage. He got into the car. He punched the address into the GPS. Port Haven, Maine. Distance, 3,100 miles. Estimated time, 46 hours. Calculate route, Ethan said. The GPS beeped. Starting route to Port Haven. He backed out of the driveway. He didn't look back at the Horizon Tower, visible in the distance. He turned his car east, away from the city of glass, towards the ocean and the truth. The United States of America is a vast, indifferent, horizontal line when viewed from the driver's seat of a speeding car. For Ethan, it was a blur of gray asphalt and brown grass. Mile 500, Montana. The sky here was too big. It pressed down on the roof of the car, heavy with unspilled snow. Ethan's hands were clamped to the steering wheel at 10 and 2. His knuckles were white. He hadn't slept in 20 hours. The energy drinks on the passenger seat were empty, rattling against each other with a hollow plastic sound. He was running a fever of 102. He knew this because his skin felt like paper that was about to catch fire, and the road ahead seemed to undulate like a snake. He pulled into a motel of I-90, and the sign buzzed. Lucky Star Motel. The T was burnt out. Lucky Star. He checked in. The clerk was a teenager with acne and a boredom so profound it looked painful. He looked at Ethan's platinum credit card. Then at Ethan's disheveled appearance, the designer stubble that had turned into a ragged beard, the bloodshot eyes, the suit jacket that was stained with sweat. "Room 12, the kid mumbled, sliding a physical key across the counter. "Checkout is 11. Don't steal the towels." Ethan laughed, a dry hacking sound. "I won't steal your towels." He walked to the room. It smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. He sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged. He opened his laptop. He had to check the museum file. Just one look. He opened the rendering of the void. It looked even worse now. It looked like a prison. He tried to draw a curve using the trackpad. His finger trembled. The line zigzagged. He slammed the laptop shut. He lay back on the bed. He closed his eyes. Flashback. 6 years ago. A dinner party at their house. Ethan is holding court, telling a story about a difficult client. The guests are laughing. Sarah is at the other end of the table. She is wearing a green dress. Ethan knocks over his wine glass. Red wine spills towards the white tablecloth. Before anyone can react, Sarah is there. She doesn't panic. She sprinkles salt on the stain. She places a napkin over it. She smiles at the guest next to her. "It's just wine," she says. "It adds character." Ethan remembers feeling annoyed. Why wasn't she upset? It was an expensive tablecloth. He wanted her to be upset so he could tell her it was okay. He wanted to be the benevolent forgiver. But she had fixed it before he could even react. End flashback. Ethan groaned in the motel room. He rolled over. He shivered. She always fixed it. He whispered to the dark. And I hated her for it. Mile 1800. The Midwest. The cornfields were dead. Miles of broken stalks sticking up from the frozen mud. Ethan's phone rang. It was connected to the car's Bluetooth. Incoming call, Jessica. He didn't want to answer, but habit was a strong chain. He pressed the button on the steering wheel. "Hunt!" he rasped. "Mr. Hunt? Oh my God, are you okay?" Jessica's voice was high. Panicked. "You haven't been in for 3 days. Mr. Sterling came by. He was screaming." "Let him scream," Ethan said. He watched a semi-truck pass him in the left lane. The wind buffet shook his car. He said, if you don't have the revised prints by Monday, he's pulling the contract. He's going with the other firm. The one from Chicago. "The Chicago firm," Ethan muttered. "They use too much glass. It's unsustainable." "Mr. Hunt, where are you? Should I tell him you're sick?" "Tell him..." Ethan paused. He saw a sign for a rest stop. "Tell him I'm doing field research. Tell him I'm looking for the soul of the building." "The soul? Sir, are you drunk?" "I wish," Ethan said. "I'll call you, Jessica." He hung up. He turned off the phone. He threw it onto the passenger seat. He didn't care. That was the terrifying part. The museum, the contract, the legacy. It all felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The only thing that felt solid, the only thing that felt real, was the GPS dot moving slowly east. Towards her, mile 2900, New England. The landscape changed. The flat open plains gave way to rolling hills and dense, dark forests. The trees were pine and spruce, deep green against the gray sky. The roads became narrower, winding. It was snowing, big, wet flakes that stuck to the windshield. Ethan's car, a rear-wheel drive luxury sedan designed for city streets, struggled. The tires spun on the slush. He was close. He could smell the ocean. It was a different smell than the Pacific. The Pacific smelled of seaweed and salt. The Atlantic smelled of cold iron and deep, ancient water. "Welcome to Maine." The sign was modest. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. It cut through the fever for a moment. He sat up straighter. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked like a wreck. His eyes were sunken. His skin was gray. He tried to smooth his hair, but it was greasy. "It doesn't matter," he told himself. "I'm not here for a beauty pageant." He drove through small towns with white steeple churches and general stores. He saw people walking in heavy coats, heads down against the wind. He reached the turnoff for Port Haven. The road dipped down towards the coast. And there it was. Port Haven wasn't a tourist trap. It was a working town. Lobster boats bobbed in the harbor, their hulls rusted and scarred. The houses were weathered shingles, gray and brown, blending into the rocks. It was tough. It was resilient. It was beautiful in a way that didn't ask for permission. "Turn left on Lighthouse Road," the GPS commanded. Ethan turned. The road wound up a cliff. On one side, the dark forest. On the other, a sheer drop to the churning ocean below. "Destination is on the right." Ethan slowed down. He saw the mailbox first. It was painted a bright, cheerful yellow. the same yellow as her umbrella. 14 Lighthouse Road. He stopped the car. He killed the engine. Silence rushed in, filled only by the roar of the surf below. He looked at the house. It was the cottage from the photo, but transformed. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by crisp white siding. The sagging roof was straight. A new porch, wrapped around the front, filled with potted plants that were currently covered in burlap for the winter. Smoke curled from the chimney. It looked warm. It looked like a home. Ethan felt a physical pain in his chest. A sharp, twisting knife. He had built mansions. He had built towers. But he had never built a home. He sat there for a long time. He was afraid to get out. What if she wasn't there? Or worse, what if she was? He saw movement. The front door opened. Ethan ducked instinctively. He felt ridiculous. He was a grown man hiding in his car. A figure stepped out onto the porch. It was Sarah. She was wearing thick wool socks, jeans, and an oversized cable-knit sweater. She held a steaming mug in her hands. She leaned against the railing and looked out at the ocean. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, chopped into a bob that framed her face. She wasn't wearing makeup, but her skin glowed. She didn't look tired. She looked settled. She took a sip of her drink. She closed her eyes and inhaled the sea air. Then, she turned and went back inside. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He couldn't go up there. Not yet. Not looking like this. Not without a plan. He started the car. He turned around, tires crunching on the gravel. He drove back down towards the town. He needed to regroup. He needed to understand the life she had built here before he tried to smash his way back into it. He parked on the main street of Port Haven. He walked into a diner called Sal's. The bell jingled. The warmth hit him, smelling of frying bacon and coffee. He sat at the counter. The vinyl stool was cracked. "Help you?" the waitress asked. She was a woman in her 60s with hair the color of steel wool. Her name tag read Martha. "Coffee," Ethan croaked. "Black and toast." Martha poured the coffee. She eyed him suspiciously. "You okay, hun? You look like you went 10 rounds with a bear." "Long drive," Ethan said. He wrapped his hands around the mug. The heat seeped into his frozen fingers. "You visiting?" Martha asked. In small towns, questions weren't optional. "Passing through," Ethan lied. "Well, watch the roads. Ice is coming in tonight." Ethan nodded. He took a sip. The coffee was weak and bitter, but it was the best thing he had ever tasted. He looked out the window. Across the street was a building with a sign, Port Haven Community Arts Center. Through the large front window, he could see inside. There were easels set up. Children were running around in smocks. And there was Sarah. She must have driven down while he was at the diner. She was kneeling on the floor, helping a little girl mix paint. Sarah was laughing. She dipped her thumb in blue paint and tapped the girl's nose. The girl giggled. Ethan watched, mesmerized. He had never seen Sarah with children, not like this. He remembered the pregnancy test, the loss. A wave of nausea hit him. He pushed the toast away. "You gonna eat that?" Martha asked. "No," Ethan said. He threw a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." He walked out. The cold air slapped him awake. He crossed the street. He stood on the sidewalk, looking through the glass. He felt like a ghost haunting the living. He was invisible to them, separated by a barrier of glass and 10 years of neglect. Then, the door to the art center opened. A man walked in. He was tall, broad shoulders. He wore a flannel shirt, work boots, and a canvas jacket covered in sawdust. He had a beard, but it was neat. He looked like a tree that had learned to walk. Ethan stiffened. The man, let's call him Ben, walked over to Sarah. Sarah looked up. Her face lit up. It wasn't the polite, dutiful smile she used to give Ethan when he came home late. It was a genuine, beam of light smile. Ben handed her a coffee. He said something. Sarah laughed. She playfully hit his arm. Ben reached out and brushed a smudge of paint from Sarah's cheek. His hand lingered for a second. Just a second. But in that second, Ethan saw everything he had lost. Intimacy, ease, connection. He saw the way Sarah leaned into the touch. She didn't pull away. She didn't stiffen. She looked safe. Ethan felt a roar in his ears. Jealousy? Yes. But it was a hollow, sick jealousy. Because he knew, deep down, that he had no right to be jealous. He had voided that right when he bought 99 roses for another woman. He took a step back. He bumped into a trash can. The metal clang echoed in the quiet street. Inside the center, Sarah looked up. She looked towards the window. Ethan panicked. He ducked into the alleyway beside the building. He leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Who is he? How long has she known him? Did she leave me for him? The questions swirled in his feverish brain. He waited. 5 minutes? 10 minutes. The class ended. The kids spilled out onto the street, parents picking them up. Then Sarah and Ben came out. They were walking together. Ben was carrying a stack of canvases. Sarah was holding her yellow umbrella, though it wasn't snowing anymore. I can fix that loose step on your porch tomorrow, Ben was saying. His voice was deep, gravelly. Before the storm hits. You don't have to, Ben, Sarah said. You've done enough. I want to, Ben said. Simple, direct. Besides, I made stew. I brought you some. You're spoiling me, Sarah said softly. They stopped at a beat-up pickup truck. Ben opened the door for her. Ethan watched from the shadows of the alley. He saw Ben look at Sarah. It was a look of pure, unadulterated adoration. It was the way Ethan used to look at buildings. Sarah got in. Ben closed the door. He walked around to the driver's side. They drove off together. Ethan stood in the freezing alley. The wind cut through his thin coat. He felt small. He felt like a variable that had been removed from the equation to make the solution elegant. He shouldn't be here. He should turn around, drive back to Seattle, sign the papers, let her be happy. That would be the noble thing to do, the graceful thing. But Ethan Hunt was not a noble man. He was a desperate one, and he was an architect. When a structure was failing, you didn't walk away. You reinforced it. You fought gravity. He walked back to his car. His legs felt like jelly. He followed the truck. He followed them back to Lighthouse Road. He parked his car further down the road, hidden by a grove of pine trees. He walked the rest of the way. The snow was starting again, harder this time. A white curtain dropping over the world. He stood at the edge of the property line, behind a stone wall. He saw the lights go on in the cottage. Golden, warm light. He saw silhouettes in the kitchen window. Sarah was setting the table. Ben was stirring something on the stove. They looked like a family. Ethan climbed over the stone wall. He stumbled. He fell onto the frozen ground. The impact jarred his bones. He lay there for a moment in the snow. The cold was seeping into him, numbing the fever fire. Get up, he told himself. He pushed himself up. He staggered towards the house. He didn't know what he was going to do. Knock? Scream? Throw a rock? He just needed to be closer. He needed to be part of the picture, even if he was just the dark smudge in the corner. He reached the porch steps. Inside, he heard laughter. Sarah's laugh, clear and bright. He took a step up. Creak. The wood groaned under his weight. Inside, the laughter stopped. Ethan froze. The front door opened. The light spilled out, blinding him. Ben stood in the doorway. He looked enormous. Who's there? Ben called out. His voice was sharp, protective. Ethan tried to speak. He tried to say, I'm her husband. He tried to say, I'm the architect of the year. But his throat closed up. His vision blurred. The world spun violently. The porch light elongated into a streak of burning gold. Sarah? Ethan whispered. It was barely a sound. His knees gave way. He collapsed forward. He hit the wooden deck with a heavy, dead thud. The last thing he heard was a gasp. Ethan. It was her voice. And then, darkness, absolute and merciful. Waking up was not a singular event. It was a series of failed attempts to surface from a deep, dark ocean. First, there was heat. Not the dry, suffocating heat of the fever, but a heavy, comforting warmth. Weight, layers of wool. Then, there was smell, wood smoke, dried lavender, sage, and something savory. Chicken broth? Finally, there was a sound. The rhythmic, distant boom of the ocean hitting rocks. And closer, the scratch of a pencil on paper. Scritch, scratch, pause, scritch, scratch. Ethan opened his eyes. He was looking at a ceiling. It wasn't smooth, white plaster. It was knotted pine, golden and aged, with beams that showed the marks of the adze that had shaped them 100 years ago. He turned his head. The movement made the room spin sluggishly, like a carousel slowing down. He was in a small room. The walls were painted a soft, creamy yellow. There was a window, with lace curtains that filtered the gray winter light. He tried to sit up. His body felt alien, heavy, weak. He looked down at himself. He was wearing a flannel shirt. It was old, soft, and plaid. It wasn't his. It was too big in the shoulders. Panic flared in his chest. Where was his suit? His armor? You're awake. The voice came from the corner. Ethan froze. He turned his head further. Sarah was sitting in a rocking chair near the window. She had a sketchbook on her lap. She was wearing a thick cardigan and reading glasses. She took off the glasses and looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't happy. It was watchful. "Sarah," Ethan croaked. His voice was a rusted hinge. "Here," she said. She stood up and walked over to the bedside table. She poured water from a ceramic pitcher into a glass. "Drink slowly." She held the glass to his lips. Her hand was steady. His was trembling so violently he couldn't hold it himself. He drank. The water was cold and tasted of minerals. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. "How long?" Ethan whispered, falling back against the pillows. 2 days, Sarah said calmly. "You had a fever of 104. Pneumonia, the doctor thinks. Or exhaustion, probably both." "Doctor?" "Dr. Evans came by. He gave you antibiotics. He wanted to send you to the hospital in Portland, but the storm closed the roads." She walked back to the window. She looked out at the white world outside. "You're stuck here, Ethan, until the plows come through." Ethan looked at her back. She seemed taller than he remembered. Or maybe he was just lower. "Who changed my clothes?" he asked. The question felt petty, but he needed to know. "Ben did," Sarah said, without turning around. Ben, the man from the truck, the tree that walked. Ethan felt a flush of humiliation burn his neck. Another man had undressed him. Another man had seen him in his weakest state. "Where is he?" Ethan asked stiffly. "He's outside, shoveling snow, keeping the generator running." She turned to face him. Her eyes were clear, devoid of the misty sadness he was used to. "Why are you here, Ethan?" The question was simple. The answer was not. Ethan tried to sit up again. This time he managed to prop himself up on his elbows. "I came to find you," he said. "I gathered that," she said dryly. "You drove 3,000 miles in a snowstorm while sick. That's dramatic, even for you." I needed to see you." "Why?" "Because you left," Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. "You just disappeared. No note, no explanation, just an empty house and divorce papers." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. She walked over to the foot of the bed. She gripped the wooden frame. "I left an envelope," she said. "I left my keys. I left the ring. That wasn't no explanation, Ethan. That was a statement." "But why?" Ethan demanded. Was it the flowers?" Sarah laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "The flowers?" "The roses," Ethan said. "I know you saw me. I know you saw the card for Chloe." Sarah shook her head. She looked at him with a pity that cut deeper than anger. "You think this is about Chloe, isn't it?" Ethan asked. "I cheated. I know, I messed up. I was an idiot. But 99 roses. It was a mistake. A stupid, cliché mistake." "Ethan," Sarah said softly, "I didn't leave because you slept with her. I knew about her. I knew about the one before her, and the assistant before that." Ethan went still. The air in the room seemed to solidify. "You knew?" "I always knew," Sarah said. "You aren't as clever as you think. You come home smelling of different perfumes. You guard your phone. You buy expensive gifts when you feel guilty. It's a pattern." "Then why?" Ethan whispered. "Why stay for 10 years? Why leave now?" Sarah walked to the window again. She touched the cold glass. "Because I thought I could love you enough for both of us," she said. "I thought if I supported you, if I built the foundation, eventually you would stop climbing and look down. I thought you would see me." She turned back to him. "But on Thursday, in the flower shop, it wasn't the cheating. It was the effort." "The effort?" "You bought her 99 roses, Ethan. You wrote a card. You planned a delivery. You put thought into it. When was the last time you put thought into me? Into us?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came. "For our 5th anniversary, you gave me a gift card," Sarah said. "For my 30th birthday, you forgot until noon, and then you had your secretary send me a fruit basket." "A fruit basket, Ethan?" "I was busy," Ethan defended weakly. "I was building the firm." "You were building a monument to yourself," Sarah corrected. "And I was just maintenance staff." She sighed. She looked tired suddenly. "Rest, Ethan. We can talk later. I have soup on the stove." She started to leave the room. "Sarah," he called out. She stopped in the doorway. "I can change," he said. It was the line he always used. The closer. Sarah didn't look back. "I know you can, Ethan, but I don't think you want to." and I don't think I care anymore. She walked out. The door clicked shut. Ethan fell back onto the pillows. He stared at the knotted pine ceiling. He traced the lines of the wood with his eyes. They swirled and twisted, leading nowhere. He slept again. When he woke, it was dark. The door opened. A silhouette filled the frame. It wasn't Sarah. "You're up," a deep voice rumbled. Ben walked in. He flipped the light switch. The sudden brightness made Ethan squint. Ben was holding a tray, a bowl of soup, thick bread, and a glass of water. He set the tray down on the bedside table with a heavy thud. Ethan looked at him. Up close, Ben was even more imposing. He had a scar above his left eyebrow. His hands were rough, calloused, stained with wood stain and oil. He smelled of sawdust and cold air. "Eat," Ben said. It wasn't a request. "I'm not hungry," Ethan muttered, his pride trying to rally. "Sarah made it," Ben said. "She spent 3 hours making the stock. You're going to eat it." Ethan looked at the soup. It smelled incredible. His stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. He sat up. He reached for the spoon. His hand shook. Ben watched him. He didn't offer to help. He just crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe. "So," Ben said, "you're the famous architect." Ethan took a sip of soup. It was hot, rich, salty. It revived him. "Ethan Hunt," Ethan said, trying to inject some authority into his voice. "I know who you are," Ben said. "I looked you up. Master of modernism, the king of concrete. Something like that. I saw your buildings online," Ben said. "Impressive stuff. Very big." "They are significant," Ethan corrected. "Sure," Ben nodded. "Significant. Cold, though. Not much wood. Not much life." "It's a style," Ethan snapped. "It's about purity." "Purity," Ben chuckled. "Is that what you call it?" He pushed off the doorframe and took a step closer. "Listen, Hunt. I'm a carpenter. I build houses. I build furniture. Things people use. Things that hold them up when they're tired. I don't know much about purity, but I know about structure." He pointed a thick finger at Ethan. "Sarah is the strongest structure I've ever met. She came here 2 years ago. Broken. She was a shadow. She bought this old wreck of a cottage. I told her it needed to be torn down. The foundation was cracked. The roof was rotting." Ethan stopped eating. He listened. "She said no," Ben continued. "She said she wanted to fix it. And she did. She didn't hire a crew. She did most of it herself. I helped with the heavy beams, but she sanded every floorboard. She painted every wall. She planted that garden out there in soil that was basically rock." Ben's eyes narrowed. "She built a life here. A good life. She laughs here. She paints. She has friends." He leaned down, his face inches from Ethan's. "If you're here to break her again, if you're here to drag her back to your glass box, you're going to have to go through me. And unlike you, I don't break easily." Ethan looked into Ben's eyes. They were brown and steady. There was no malice, just a calm, terrifying protectiveness. "I'm her husband," Ethan whispered. "It was his only card." "Technically," Ben said. "But a piece of paper doesn't make you a husband. Being there makes you a husband." Ben straightened up. "Eat your soup. I'll come back for the tray in an hour." He walked out. Ethan sat alone with the soup. He felt small. He felt like a child who had been scolded by a grown-up. He looked at the bread. It was homemade, thick, uneven slices. He took a bite. It was dense and chewy. He realized then that he had never eaten bread Sarah had made. Had she made bread in Seattle? Or did she just buy the artisanal loaves from the bakery because he preferred the packaging? He finished the soup. He scraped the bowl clean. The next morning, the storm broke. The sun came out, blindingly bright on the snow. Ethan felt stronger. The fever was gone, leaving him weak but clear-headed. He found his clothes. Ben had washed them. They were folded neatly on a chair. His suit pants were wrinkled, but clean. His shirt was pressed. He dressed. He felt ridiculous wearing a suit in a cottage, but it was all he had. He walked out of the bedroom. The cottage was open plan. The kitchen flowed into the living room. It was filled with light. There were plants everywhere, hanging from the beams, sitting on the windowsills. Sarah was in the kitchen, washing dishes. She turned when she heard him. "You're up," she said. "There's coffee in the pot." Ethan poured a cup. It was strong, good. "Thank you," he said. "For everything. The nursing, the soup? It's what anyone would do," Sarah said. She dried her hands on a towel. "I need to talk to you, Sarah. Please." She sighed. She gestured to the small dining table. "Sit." Ethan sat. The table was old oak, scarred and scratched. Sarah sat opposite him. She clasped her hands. "Go ahead," she said. Ethan took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this speech in his head 1,000 times on the drive over. He was going to tell her about the award, about the bonus, about how much he needed her for the museum project. But looking at her now, in the sunlit room, surrounded by her own creation, the speech died in his throat. "I found the pregnancy test," he said. The words came out before he could stop them. Sarah went still. Her hands tightened on the table. "I broke a pot in the studio," Ethan explained hurriedly. "I found the pouch 3 years ago." Sarah looked down at her hands. A shadow passed over her face. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "Why didn't you?" "When?" she asked, looking up. Her eyes were wet. "When you were in Dubai? When you called me for 5 minutes a day to complain about the steel shipment?" "I would have come home," Ethan said. "If you told me, I would have come home." "Would you?" Sarah challenged. "Or would you have resented me for pulling you away from your masterpiece?" Ethan flinched. He wanted to say no, but the truth was a heavy stone in his gut. "I lost it at 8 weeks," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, but thin. "It was very painful. I went to the hospital alone. I came home alone." "Sarah," Ethan reached across the table. She pulled her hands back. "I lay in bed for a week," she continued. "And when you came back, you asked me if I had lost weight. You said I looked trim. You were happy about it." Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered that moment. He remembered thinking she looked good. God, he was a monster. "That was the day the marriage died, Ethan," Sarah said. "Not the flowers, not Chloe. It was the day I realized that my grief was invisible to you, that I was invisible." "I'm sorry," Ethan said. The words felt inadequate, tiny. "I am so sorry." "I know," Sarah said. "I believe you're sorry now. Because you're hurt. Because you're alone. But sorry doesn't fix the foundation, Ethan. It just covers the cracks." She stood up. "I have to go to the art center. I have a class." "I'll come with you," Ethan said. He stood up too. "I saw you there, through the window. You look happy." "I am happy," Sarah said. "I teach kids how to paint, not to be famous, just to express themselves. It's small, but it's real." "Let me see it," Ethan pleaded. "Let me see your life." Sarah hesitated. She looked at him, this man in a wrinkled suit, standing in her kitchen, looking lost. "Fine," she said. "But you stay in the back. You don't disrupt the class, and you don't criticize." "I won't," Ethan promised. They drove to town in Ben's truck. Sarah drove. Ethan sat in the passenger seat. The truck smelled of pine and gasoline. "Ben let you borrow his truck?" Ethan asked. "It's my truck," Sarah said. "I bought it from him last year. He just borrows it when he needs to haul lumber." "Oh." Ethan looked out the window. The snow was piled high on the sides of the road. "Why here?" Ethan asked. "Why Maine? My grandmother used to bring me here," Sarah said, "before she died. She said it was the place where the land fights back against the sea. She said it made you tough." "You were always tough," Ethan said. "No," Sarah shook her head. "I was enduring. There's a difference. Enduring is passive. You just take the weight until you break. Being tough is pushing back." They arrived at the art center. Ethan walked in behind her. The room was chaotic, messy, colorful. It was everything his office was not. Sarah took off her coat. She put on a smock covered in paint splatters. Ethan sat on a folding chair in the back corner. He watched her. He watched her greet the children by name. He watched her kneel down to help a boy who was frustrated with his brush. He watched her laugh when a girl accidentally painted her own nose. He took out a small notebook from his pocket. He always carried one. He started to sketch. Not the building, not the room. He sketched Sarah. He sketched the way she bent down, the curve of her back, the softness of her smile, the way her hands moved, guiding, not controlling. He sketched for an hour. For the first time in years, his hand didn't cramp. The lines weren't rigid, they flowed. He looked at the drawing. It was messy, it was rough, but it had grace, the grace. He realized then what he had been missing in his architecture. He had been designing for the eye. Sarah designed for the heart. He had been building shells. She was building souls. The class ended. The kids left. Sarah started cleaning up. Ethan stood up to help. "Leave it," she said. "I have a system." She walked over to him. She saw the notebook in his hand. What were you doing? Ethan handed her the notebook. Sarah looked at the sketch. She stared at it for a long time. It's loose, she said. It's you, Ethan said. Sarah closed the notebook. She handed it back. It's good, Ethan. It's the best thing you've drawn in a long time. I needed a model, Ethan said. I needed inspiration. Don't, Sarah warned. Don't turn me into your muse again. I'm not a resource for your career. That's not what I meant, Ethan said. I mean, I see it now. I see what I was missing. And what is that? You, Ethan said. Not just you as a wife, but you as a partner. You were the one fixing my designs. You were the one adding the warmth. I took credit for your soul, Sarah. Sarah looked at him. Her eyes softened slightly. You finally admit it. I do, Ethan said. I admit it all. I'm a fraud without you. He took a step closer. Come back, Sarah. Not to be my wife. Be my partner. Be my equal. We can rename the firm. Hunt and Hunt. Or just Hunt and Sarah. I don't care. We can build the museum together. We can build the void, but fill it with light. Your light. He was pitching now. He was in his element. He was selling the dream. I can give you a studio. A real one, not in the basement. We can hire staff. You can teach if you want, but come back. Don't waste your talent here in a small town teaching finger painting. Sarah's expression changed. The softness vanished. It was replaced by a steel shutter slamming down. She took a step back. Waste? She repeated. Her voice was quiet, dangerous. I mean, underutilize. Ethan backpedaled. You're brilliant, Sarah. You should be designing skylines, not this. He gestured to the messy community center. Sarah looked around the room. She looked at the children's paintings drying on the rack. You still don't get it, she said. You think success is size. You think success is how many people look at your building and say, wow. She pointed to a clumsy painting of a dog on the wall. That painting? The boy who painted it hasn't spoken in 6 months since his dad died. Today he laughed. That is success, Ethan. That is architecture. Building a space where a broken kid can feel safe enough to laugh. She grabbed her coat. I'm not coming back, Ethan. I'm not your partner. I'm not your muse. And I am certainly not your fix. She walked to the door. You can walk back to the cottage. It's only 2 miles. The cold air might help you think. She left. Ethan stood alone in the center of the room. He looked at the painting of the dog. It was ugly. It was messy. And it was alive. He looked at his own sketch of Sarah. It was beautiful. But it was just a picture of a woman walking away. Ethan walked back. The wind bit at his face. His dress shoes slipped on the icy road. By the time he reached the cottage, he was freezing again. He saw Ben's truck in the driveway. He walked up to the porch. He didn't knock. He just opened the door. Sarah and Ben were in the kitchen. They were drinking tea. They stopped talking when he entered. The silence was different this time. It wasn't awkward. It was final. Ethan walked to the table. He reached into his bag. He pulled out the blue folder, the one with the receipts and the deed. He placed it on the table. Then, he pulled out the manila envelope, the divorce papers. He took a pen from his pocket. He didn't look at Sarah. He couldn't. If he looked at her, he would beg, and he knew begging wouldn't work. He opened the papers to the last page. He signed his name, Ethan Alexander Hunt. The ink was black, permanent. He closed the folder. You win, Ethan said. His voice broke on the last word. He looked at Ben. Take care of the roof, Ethan said. The pitch on the east side is a little shallow. Snow might accumulate. Ben nodded slowly. I'll keep an eye on it. Ethan looked at Sarah. I can't build the museum, he said. Not without the grace, and I don't have it. You can find it, Sarah said softly. But you have to stop looking for it in the mirror. Ethan nodded. He turned around. He picked up his bag. I'll send for the car, he said. I'll take a taxi to the airport. I can drive you, Ben offered. No, Ethan said. I need to walk. I need to feel the cold. He walked out the door. He walked down the steps. He walked past the yellow mailbox. He walked down the winding road, away from the cottage, away from the warmth, back into the gray, indifferent world. He was alone. He was divorced. He was a failure. But for the first time in 10 years, as the wind hit his face, he felt something real. He felt the pain. And it was a start. The flight back to Seattle was a blur of turbulence and pressurized air. Ethan sat in seat 2A, first class. The champagne was offered, but he turned it down. He asked for water. He looked out the window. The clouds below were thick and impenetrable, a white floor that hid the world. It reminded him of the snow in Maine. It reminded him of the silence of the cottage. He touched the inside pocket of his jacket. The signed divorce papers were there. They felt heavy, like a lead weight stitched into the lining of his suit. He landed at SeaTac Airport at midnight. It was raining. Of course it was raining. He took a taxi home. He didn't have his car. It was still parked on a side street in Port Haven, abandoned like his old life. He had left the keys with Ben. Sell it, he had said. Give the money to the art center. The taxi driver was chatty. He talked about the Seahawks. He talked about the traffic. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city streak by in ribbons of neon and gray. You live in that big modern place on the hill? The driver asked as they ascended the winding road. The one that looks like a spaceship. I used to, Ethan said softly. Must be nice, the driver whistled. Living like a king. Ethan didn't answer. He got out. He stood before his house, the Horizon House, his masterpiece. It loomed above him, sharp angles cutting into the night sky. The concrete was wet and black. The glass was dark. It didn't look like a spaceship. It looked like a tomb. He unlocked the door. The air inside was stale. It was the smell of a house that had been holding its breath. He walked into the living room. The stain on the rug from Chloe's wine was still there. The raku bowl was still full of ash. Ethan didn't turn on the lights. He navigated by the gray, ambient glow of the street lamps outside. He walked to the kitchen. He opened the drawer. He took out a roll of heavy-duty trash bags. He started cleaning. He didn't clean like a maid. He cleaned like an archaeologist trying to clear a site. He threw away the wine glasses. He threw away the raku bowl. He threw away the cushions Chloe had touched. He went upstairs. He stripped the bed. He threw the sheets into the bag. He threw the pillows into the bag. He opened the closet. He took out his suits. The expensive, tailored Italian suits that he wore like armor. He threw them on the floor. He found a pair of jeans he hadn't worn in 5 years. He found a black t-shirt. He put them on. He sat on the bare mattress. He was exhausted, but his mind was racing. It was vibrating with a strange, frantic energy. He looked at the wall opposite the bed. It was a blank, gray canvas. He thought about the cottage, the knotted pine, the plants, the imperfection. He thought about Sarah. You think success is size. He closed his eyes. He saw the boy painting the dog. He saw the jagged, messy joy of it. I have to finish it, he whispered. Not the marriage. That was done. The museum. He had to finish it. But not for Sterling. Not for the award. For himself. To prove that he wasn't just a machine that converted concrete into ego. Monday morning, 8:12 a.m. Ethan walked into the firm. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and a dark raincoat. He hadn't shaved. His hair was windblown. The reception area was quiet. Jessica looked up from her computer. Her jaw dropped. Mr. Hunt? She gasped. You're back. I am, Ethan said. His voice was raspy. Mr. Sterling is in your office, Jessica whispered, her eyes wide. He's been there for 20 minutes. He's furious. He said if you aren't here by 8:15, he's suing for breach of contract. Okay, Ethan said. He sounded calm, too calm. Do you want me to call security? Or get you a coffee? No coffee, Ethan said. Just clear my schedule, Jessica. Cancel everything. The lunch with the mayor, the interview with Architectural Digest. Cancel it all. For how long? Forever, Ethan said. He walked past her. He opened the door to his office. Julian Sterling was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. He turned around. He looked at Ethan's clothes. He looked at the stubble. He sneered. You look like hell, Hunt. I feel fantastic, Ethan lied. Where's the design? Sterling demanded. You said you were finding the soul of the building. Well, did you find it? Or were you just on a bender? Ethan walked to his desk. The model of the void was sitting there, the black, imposing fortress. He looked at it. I found something, Ethan said. I found out that you were right. I usually am, Sterling sniffed. It is a tomb, Ethan said, touching the sharp edge of the model's roof. It's arrogant. It's cold. It tells people to shut up and feel small. So you fixed it? No, Ethan said. I'm destroying it. He lifted his hand and brought his fist down on the model. Crack! The plastic shattered. The balsa wood splintered. Sterling jumped back. What the hell are you doing? Ethan swept his arm across the desk. The rest of the model flew off, crashing against the wall. Pieces of black foam board scattered across the floor, like debris from an explosion. Explosion. It's garbage, Ethan said. He was breathing hard. It's all garbage. You're insane, Sterling said, backing towards the door. You're having a breakdown. I'm calling the Chicago firm. Give me 24 hours, Ethan said. No, Sterling shook his head. You're done, Ethan. You're unstable. 24 hours, Ethan roared. The sound filled the room. It wasn't the polished, controlled voice of the master architect. It was a raw human sound. It was the sound of a man fighting for his life. Sterling stopped. He looked at Ethan. He saw the desperation in his eyes. But he also saw something else. Fire. 24 hours, Sterling whispered. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock a.m. If it's not perfect, I will bury you professionally. You won't design a doghouse in this city again. Deal, Ethan said. Sterling walked out. Ethan locked the door. He looked at the empty desk. He looked at the shattered model on the floor. He sat down. He took out a blank sheet of paper. He took out a charcoal stick. He closed his eyes. Don't think about the steel, he told himself. Think about the feeling. He thought about the rain. Seattle rain wasn't like Maine snow. It was constant. It was gray. It made people hurry. It made them hunch their shoulders. A museum in Seattle shouldn't be a fortress. It should be a shelter. It shouldn't be the void. He remembered the yellow umbrella, Sarah's umbrella, the way it created a small, mobile circle of warmth in a cold world. He put the charcoal to the paper. He drew a curve. It wasn't perfect. His hand still shook slightly from the fatigue. But the line was alive. It swooped. It gathered. He drew another line. He didn't look at the computer. He didn't open the CAD software. He drew like he was possessed. Hour 1 passed. Hour 2. Jessica knocked on the door at noon. Mr. Hunt? I brought you a sandwich. Leave it, Ethan shouted. He was on the floor now. He had unrolled a massive scroll of tracing paper. He was crawling over it, sketching with broad, sweeping strokes. He was reimagining the atrium. Instead of a high, echoing cavern, he lowered the ceiling. He made it wood, cedar, warm, aromatic cedar that would smell like the forest. He added light, not harsh spotlights, diffused light, skylights that were angled to catch the gray daylight and soften it. Children need to see the sky, Sarah had written. He drew the skylights facing east. He drew the entrance, not a slit, a wide, embracing mouth, a porch, a massive, covered porch where people could stand out of the rain without buying a ticket, a public space. Architecture is about humanity. He worked through the night. He didn't turn on the overhead lights. He worked by the light of the desk lamp. His hands were black with charcoal dust. His jeans were covered in graphite. At 3 o'clock a.m., he hit a wall. He looked at the drawing. It was good. It was warm, but it was missing something. The center, the heart. The old design had a massive abstract sculpture in the center, a piece of cold steel. What went in the center? He paced the room. He looked out the window. The city was asleep. He thought about the cottage, the kitchen table, the soup, the way Ben had leaned against the doorframe, the way Sarah had sat in the rocking chair. Connection. He ran back to the paper. In the center of the atrium, he drew a depression, a sunken seating area, like a conversation pit, but bigger. And in the middle of that, a hearth, a fire, a museum with a fireplace. It was insane. The insurance costs would be astronomical. The preservationists would scream about smoke damage to the art. But Ethan didn't care. Fire was primal. Fire was where people gathered. Fire was life. He drew the chimney, a glass cylinder that would carry the smoke up and out, piercing the cedar roof, a pillar of light and heat. He stepped back. He looked at the drawing. It didn't look like an Ethan Hunt building. It didn't look sharp. It didn't look expensive. It looked like a place you wanted to be when it was raining. He slumped against the wall. He was exhausted. His body ached, but he smiled. He pulled out his phone. He turned it on. He had one text message from a number he didn't have saved, but he knew. Take care of yourself. It was Sarah. He stared at the screen. She hadn't said, good luck. She hadn't said, I miss you. She said, take care of yourself. It was a goodbye. A kind, gentle goodbye. Ethan typed back, I found the curve. He sent it. He didn't expect a reply. And he didn't get one. He put the phone down. He watched the sun come up over the Puget Sound. The light hit the water and turned it into hammered gold. For the first time, he saw the sunrise not as the start of a workday, but as a gift. 9 o'clock a.m., Tuesday. The conference room was full. The entire board was there. Sterling sat at the head of the table, tapping his pen. Ethan walked in. He was still wearing his dirty clothes. His hands were still stained with charcoal. He carried the roll of paper under his arm. The board members gasped. They whispered, "Is he drunk? Is he homeless?" Sterling stood up. "This is a joke, right? You show up to a multi-million-dollar pitch looking like a janitor?" "I'm a janitor," Ethan said. He walked to the table. "I'm cleaning up the mess I made." He pushed the expensive projector aside. He didn't have a PowerPoint. He didn't have a 3D rendering. He unrolled the paper. It was messy. It was smudged. It was taped together in places. He pinned it to the wall with thumbtacks. The board stared at it. It was a chaotic explosion of lines and shadows. "What is this?" Sterling asked. "It looks like a child drew it." "No," Ethan said. "A child draws what they see. I drew what I felt." He turned to the room. "I have spent the last 10 years building monuments," Ethan began. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I built towers to touch the sky. I built walls to separate the special people inside from the ordinary people outside." He looked at his hands, the black dust. "I thought that was strength. I thought that was order." He pointed to the drawing. "This is not a monument. This is a living room. Seattle's living room." He walked over to the section showing the entrance. "It rains here," Ethan said. 200 days a year. We are cold. We are wet. We are lonely. We go to museums not just to see art, but to be together, to be inside." He traced the curve of the cedar roof. "This roof isn't steel. It's wood. It will age. It will turn gray. It will change, just like we do." He pointed to the center, the hearth. "And this," Ethan said, "this is the fire." "A fire?" a board member asked, incredulous. "In an art museum?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Because before we painted on canvas, we painted on cave walls. And we painted by firelight. Fire is the first gallery. It draws us in. It warms us." He looked at Sterling. "You asked for humanity, Julian. You asked for a heartbeat. This is it. It's not perfect. It's not clean. It's messy. It's warm. It's flawed." He paused. He took a deep breath. "Just like us." Silence descended on the room. Ethan waited. He was ready to be fired. He was ready to be escorted out by security. He was ready to go back to his empty house and sleep for a week. Sterling stood up. He walked over to the drawing. He peered at the messy charcoal lines. He looked at the hearth. He looked at the wide, embracing porch. He took off his glasses. He looked at Ethan. "It's impossible to build," Sterling said. "The fire codes alone will be a nightmare." "I can solve the codes," Ethan said. "I'm a good architect." Technically, Sterling looked back at the drawing. "It's risky," Sterling muttered. "It's completely against the current trend of minimalism." "Trends fade," Ethan said. "Warmth doesn't." Sterling turned to the board. "Well?" The board members looked at each other. The woman who had criticized the lighting in the first meeting spoke up. "I like it," she said softly. "It feels safe. It feels like home," another member said. Sterling looked at Ethan. A small, grudging smile touched his lips. "You look like a disaster hunt. You smell like graphite and desperation." "I know," Ethan said. "Go take a shower," Sterling said. "And then get your team to digitize this. We break ground in 3 months." Ethan didn't cheer. He didn't pump his fist. He just nodded. A slow, heavy nod. "Thank you," he said. He rolled up the paper. He took the thumbtacks out. He walked out of the conference room. He walked past Jessica. She was beaming. She gave him a thumbs up. Ethan walked to the elevator. He pressed the button for the lobby. He went down. He walked out of the building into the rain. He didn't run to his car. He stood on the sidewalk. He let the rain hit his face. He let it wash the charcoal dust from his skin. He had won. He had saved his career. But as he stood there, watching the busy street, he realized he had no one to call. He couldn't call Sarah. That door was closed. He couldn't call Chloe. That mistake was buried. He was the architect of the year. He had the contract of the decade. And he was completely, utterly alone. He started walking. Not towards his house. Just walking. He passed a flower shop. Not the Velvet Petal. Just a small bodega on the corner. Buckets of flowers were sitting out in the rain. Ethan stopped. He looked at the roses. Red. Perfect. Wrapped in plastic. He looked at the lilies. White. Elegant. Then he saw them. In a small, galvanized bucket near the back. Sunflowers. They were out of season. They looked a little ragged. Their heads were bowed. But they were bright. They were yellow. Ethan reached out and touched a petal. It was rough. He picked up the bunch. How much? He asked the vendor. $10, the guy said. Ethan paid him. He held the sunflowers. He didn't know why he bought them. He had no one to give them to. He walked to a park bench. He sat down. He placed the flowers next to him. He took out his phone. He opened the notes app. He started to type. Not a text message, a letter. Dear Sarah, I won the contract. I used your curve. I used your warmth. You were right. You were always right. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I can't have that. I just wanted you to know that I listened. Finally. I'm going to sell the house. The Horizon house. It's too big. It echoes. I think I'm going to buy a small place. Maybe with a garden. I don't know how to garden. I'll probably kill everything. But I want to try. I hope the roof holds up in the snow. I hope you are painting. I hope you're happy. Ethan. He read it over. He didn't send it. He knew if he sent it, it would be an intrusion. It would be him trying to insert himself into her peace. He deleted the note. Sending it was for him. Not sending it was for her. That was the grace. He sat on the bench in the rain for a long time, the yellow sunflowers bright against the gray city, watching the people rush by, learning for the first time how to just sit still and endure the weather. The sale of the house on the hill took exactly 3 weeks. It was bought by a 26-year-old tech CEO who had made his fortune in cryptocurrency. The kid wore hoodies and sneakers that cost more than a car. He walked through the empty rooms of the Horizon house, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. It's sick, the kid said, nodding at the vast gray emptiness. It's like a fortress. No distractions. I love the coldness of it. It feels efficient. Ethan stood by the window, signing the deed. He looked at the kid. He saw a mirror image of his younger self. The hunger. The need for control. The belief that if you built walls thick enough, you could keep the chaos of life out. It's a good house, Ethan said, handing over the keys. But the heating bill is a nightmare, and the roof leaks when the wind blows from the north. The kid laughed. I don't care about leaks. I'll hire someone to catch the water. Ethan smiled. A sad, knowing smile. Good luck. He walked out of the house with a single box in his arms. He didn't look back. He didn't feel the pang of loss he expected. He felt lighter. It was as if he had been carrying a backpack full of stones for 10 years, and he had finally set it down. He moved into a loft in the Pioneer Square district. It was an old building, red brick walls, exposed pipes. The floorboards were scarred and creaked when he walked. It was noisy. He could hear the garbage trucks in the alley and the bass from the jazz club downstairs. He loved it. He bought a plant, a fiddle leaf fig. The florist told him it was temperamental. It needs light, she said, but not too much, and water, but not too much. It's dramatic. I'm used to dramatic, Ethan said. He named the plant Julian, after his boss. The construction of the Seattle Modern Art Museum, now nicknamed The Hearth, began in January. It was a wet winter. Mud was everywhere. Ethan was on the site every day at 6:00 a.m. He stopped wearing suits. He wore work boots, jeans, and a thick canvas jacket. He grew a beard. Not the depression stubble from before, but a neat, trimmed beard that hid the sharpness of his jaw. He didn't stand in the trailer, looking at blueprints. He was down in the pit. He argued with the steelworkers. He drank bad coffee with the electricians. He learned the names of the crew. One day, in March, the cedar beams arrived for the ceiling. They were massive, 60 feet long, old-growth timber, sustainably harvested. They smelled of the forest, a sharp, resinous scent that cut through the smell of wet concrete and diesel. Ethan ran his hand along the grain of the wood. It was rough. Sand it down, the foreman said. Make it smooth like glass. That's the spec. No, Ethan said. The foreman looked at him. Sir, leave it rough, Ethan said. I want people to see the saw marks. I want them to see that a human hand touched this. If we sand it, it looks like plastic. If we leave it, it looks like a tree. The client might complain, the foreman warned. I'll handle the client, Ethan said. Julian Sterling did complain. He came to the site wearing a hard hat that looked pristine. It looks unfinished, Sterling sniffed, looking up at the rough-hewn beams. It looks rustic. We are a modern art museum, Ethan, not a lodge. Wait until the light hits it, Ethan said. Trust me. Sterling looked at Ethan. He looked at the boots, the beard, the calmness. You've changed, Hunt, Sterling muttered. You used to scream if a screw was a millimeter off. Now you're hugging trees. I'm just listening to the material, Julian. Ethan said. The wood wants to be wood. Let it be wood. Sterling shook his head. If this fails, it's on you. I know, Ethan said. Summer came. The structure rose. The hearth began to take shape. The glass cylinder for the chimney was installed. It was a feat of engineering, a transparent tube rising through the center of the atrium. Ethan spent his nights in the loft. He cooked for himself. He was terrible at it. He burned toast. He overcooked pasta. But he ate it. He sat at his small table, listening to the noises of the city, and he ate his burnt toast. He wrote letters to Sarah. He wrote them in a notebook he kept by his bed. June 12th. Dear Sarah, the cedar went up today. It smells like your cottage. I hope you don't mind that I stole the smell. July 4th. Dear Sarah, I killed the plant. Julian is dead. I overwatered him. I'm trying again with a cactus. It seems more my speed. August 20th. Dear Sarah, I saw a woman today who walked like you. I followed her for 2 blocks before I realized she was a stranger. I felt like a stalker. I went home and threw out all the wine in the house. He never sent them. The notebook filled up. It became a diary of his rehabilitation. He didn't date anyone. Chloe texted him once, 3 months after the breakup. Miss the penthouse. Miss the parties. You bored yet? Ethan blocked the number. He deleted the thread. He felt nothing, not even anger. She was just a ghost from a life he didn't recognize anymore. October. The final push. The museum was 90% done. The art was arriving. Massive crates were wheeled in, sculptures, canvases. Ethan was walking through the main gallery. The lighting was being tested. The skylights, the ones angled east, caught the autumn sun. The light filtered down through the cedar beams. It was gold and honey. It didn't glare. It washed the room in a gentle, warm glow. It was exactly what he had drawn in his charcoal sketch. He stood in the center of the atrium. The sunken conversation pit was finished. The stone hearth was ready. He signaled the technician. Light it. The gas burner hissed. A flame erupted in the glass cylinder. It danced. It reflected off the glass walls, multiplying into 100 small fires. The warmth radiated outward. A group of workers stopped what they were doing. They walked over. They didn't say anything. They just stood by the rail of the pit, looking at the fire. They took off their hard hats. They warmed their hands. It works, the foreman whispered. Damn, it actually works. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He had built a place where people wanted to stop. He had built a pause button in a busy world. November 12th, the grand opening. It was exactly 1 year since the night of the 99 roses. 1 year since the anniversary that wasn't. The city was buzzing. The hearth was the talk of the architecture world. The critics were skeptical, but the public was intrigued. Ethan stood in his loft. He looked at his suit. He had bought a new one. It wasn't black. It was a deep, textured navy wool. It was softer. He put it on. He trimmed his beard. He looked in the mirror. He saw lines around his eyes that weren't there a year ago. He looked older, but he looked real. He took a deep breath. He went to the museum. The crowd was immense. The rain was pouring down outside, classic Seattle. But inside, the museum was a sanctuary. People streamed in through the wide, covered porch. They shook off their umbrellas. They walked into the atrium and stopped. They looked up at the cedar. They smelled the wood smoke and the rain. They saw the fire. Nobody rushed to the art. They went to the fire. Strangers sat on the benches in the conversation pit. They talked. They laughed. They dried their coats. Ethan stood on the mezzanine level, watching. Julian Sterling walked up to him. He was holding a glass of champagne. You did it, Sterling said. He sounded stunned. They love it. I've never seen people linger in a lobby like this. They usually run for the Impressionists. They needed to be warm first, Ethan said. The critics are calling it neo-humanism, Sterling laughed. They think you're a genius again. I'm not a genius, Ethan said. I'm just a slow learner. Go down there, Sterling urged. Mingle. Take your victory lap. In a minute, Ethan said. He scanned the crowd. He wasn't looking for praise. He was looking for a sign. He had sent an invitation. He had mailed it to 14 Lighthouse Road, Port Haven, Maine. Inside the envelope, he had put a single VIP ticket. And a note, just 4 words. It has a fire. He didn't know if she would come. He told himself she wouldn't. He told himself she shouldn't. But hope is a stubborn architect. It keeps building even when the permits are denied. He watched the door. 7 to Piazza Sanems. 7:30 p.m. 8 She didn't come. Of course she didn't come. Maine was 3,000 miles away. She had a life. She had Ben. She had the art center. She wasn't going to fly across the country just to see a building designed by her ex-husband. Ethan felt a heavy, dull ache in his chest. But he accepted it. He drank his water, and they looked happy. Ethan turned and walked the other way. He walked with a lighter step. He wasn't the architect of the year anymore. He wasn't the husband of Sarah Hunt. He was just Ethan, and for the first time in his life, that was enough.